Chapter 2008. 2008 took over the sky. Barely worthy of me. A proud sentence came out of Qin Feiyang's mouth. The young man widened his eyes when he heard his words. The corner of his mouth could not help but twitch. He felt that Qin Feiyang was a little arrogant. Feiyang, this is Ding Zhao's sister. Ding Zhao is the only disciple of the Dragon King. If you can marry her, you will be rich. The young man said to Qin Feiyang speechlessly. It's her honor that I like her. However, the words that came next made the young man widen his eyes again. He turned to Qin Feiyang with a bitter smile and said, Brother, I know you have a fortuitous encounter, but you can't be so pretentious. Hee. The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth curled up slightly. He stared at Lu Mingxin, who was in the sky above the gate of the Dragon Gate Academy, and stepped forward. His speed was very fast. The young man only felt his figure move before he directly disappeared before his eyes. When he looked forward, he immediately saw Qin Feiyang, who was hovering in the air in front of him. He opened his mouth slightly. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the air above the entrance of Longmen Academy. He was staring at the disciples of Longmen Academy from afar, causing everyone to be slightly stunned. Lu Mingxin looked over in surprise when she saw Qin Feiyang suddenly appear. The current Lu Mingxin was the biological sister of God Xiaoran, and she had the strength of a peak demigod. She was even able to enter the Dragon Palace freely and was able to speak with the Dragon King. Her status on Earth was unusually noble. It would not be long before she could ignite the divine fire. It wasn't an exaggeration to call her a goddess. Qin Feiyang floated in front of Lu Mingxin and sized her up. His face was filled with admiration and satisfaction. Not bad, not bad. He commented indifferently. Is this guy courting death? Although Qin Feiyang had seen how he easily suppressed Ling Xingqian and the others, he was now teasing Ding Zhao's sister. On Earth, this was simply courting death. Kid, you're courting death. I think you don't want your eyes anymore. Beside Lu Mingxin, a few disciples saw Qin Feiyang standing in front of them. His words were frivolous, and their faces revealed a cold expression. A middle-aged man waved his arm, and a stream of flames directly attacked him. Wang? Qin Feiyang waved his arm, and the flames were instantly extinguished. What? The group of Longmen Academy disciples were slightly shocked, and their eyes stared at Qin Feiyang warily. The group of people who had come to participate in the assessment were also slightly shocked. Is this young master here to participate in our Longmen Academy's assessment, or is he here to deliberately cause trouble? Lu Mingxin stared at Qin Feiyang and asked with a frown. Not bad, you have the qualifications to become my woman. Qin Feiyang didn't answer her question, and the corners of his mouth curled up as he spoke. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure moved and instantly appeared beside Lu Mingxin. Just as Lu Mingxin's face was filled with shock, a hand grabbed her waist. You let your stop right there. Lu Mingxin cried out in shock. Her expression changed slightly, and her entire body trembled as the strength of a peak stage demigod was emitted. Not bad, not bad. With the cultivation of a peak stage demigod, you should be able to ignite the divine fire very soon. Qin Feiyang laughed loudly. The aura on Lu Mingxin's body had no effect on him at all. What? Let go of our teacher Lu. The expressions of the surrounding disciples of Longmen Academy changed drastically when they saw this scene. They immediately shouted. Let go of me. Otherwise, my brother will not let you off. Lu Mingxin was caught by Qin Feiyang. Her face was slightly red and filled with anger. Is it that Xiaoran? Haha, let alone Xiaoran, even if the Dragon King came, it would be useless. Qin Feiyang said with a wanton smile, his face full of strong confidence. His words caused everyone around to reveal shocked expressions. Feiyang he. Below, when the young man saw this scene, his face was full of shock. Which reckless thing dares to cause trouble in our Dragon Gate Academy? At this moment, a powerful and dignified voice sounded from within Dragon Gate Academy. Big brother Xinfeng, save me. Lu Mingxin immediately cried out for help when she heard the voice. It's the vice principal of Xinfeng, the god who ignited the divine fire. The young master of the Protoss race in the past is now a god whose strength is comparable to 2 wisps of divine fire. That young man isn't simple either. He can easily control goddess Lu Mingxin, who is at the peak of the demigod realm. His strength has probably reached the deity realm as well. Sounds of astonishment rang out as a mysterious young man suddenly appeared. His powerful strength made goddess Lu Mingxin unable to move. Boom! Hearing Lu Mingxin's cry for help, a vast wave of pressure rushed over. Oh, a resurrected deity? Qin Feiyang looked over, a hint of interest appearing on his face. He gently raised his palm and slowly descended towards the divine peak that was flying over. A five-fingered mountain appeared in the sky and headed towards the divine peak to suppress it. Are you courting death? Do you know who you have captured? When the divine peak saw that the other party actually dared to attack him, a cold expression appeared on his face as he shouted sternly. At the same time, he waved his arm and a violent wave of energy attacked the five-fingered mountain. Boom! However, when his attack landed on the five-finger mountain, a shocked expression appeared on his face. His attack was instantly suppressed, and the five-finger mountain continued to press down on him. Break for me! At this moment, God Peak erupted with all his strength, and an even more terrifying attack attacked the five-finger mountain. Buzz! However, what shocked him was that even when his attack landed on the five-finger mountain, there was still not the slightest fluctuation. Boom! Suddenly, the five-finger mountain suddenly accelerated and directly pressed towards him. With a muffled loud sound, the five-finger mountain that was 1,000 meters in size landed in front of Dragon Gate Academy. At the position below, Xin Feng was directly suppressed below. His face was pale and filled with disbelief. The strength! This is impossible. Xin Feng muttered, filled with disbelief. What? At this moment, everyone's faces were filled with shock. The divine peak god of Dragon Gate Academy was actually easily suppressed by a single palm. What do you want to do? Lu Mingxin's expression changed drastically when she saw Qin Feiyang's terrifying strength. She stared at him and asked, What do I want to do? Qin Feiyang slightly raised his head and looked at the sky, overlooking everything around him. I, Qin Feiyang, the heir of the eternal God Lord, am going to take over this sky, ha ha ha. As he spoke, he laughed wildly. In the sky above him, an incomparably huge mountain faintly appeared, suppressing the entire sky. The heir of the eternal God Lord. Take over this sky? Chapter 2009. 2009 I shouldn't have been so arrogant in 2009. The inheritor of the eternal God Lord? Is this for real? At the gate of Dragon Gate Academy, when everyone heard Qin Feiyang's words, shock appeared on their faces. They stared blankly at the divine peak god suppressing the gate of Dragon Gate Academy, and couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. The inheritance of the eternal God Lord. Someone actually obtained the inheritance of the eternal God Lord. This is the eternal God Lord. How is this possible? Everyone was extremely shocked. More and more people were gathering around the city. Feeling the terrifying pressure from Qin Feiyang, everyone's faces were filled with fear. This was especially so when Qin Feiyang used his palm to suppress the divine peak god. No one doubted that his words were fake. Eternal God Lord? You. When Lu Mingxin heard his words, her face was filled with shock as she stared at him in disbelief. How is it? Don't you feel honored? Qin Feiyang looked at Lu Mingxin with a smile on his face. All of you, go and inform all the gods in Dragon Gate Academy. Also, inform the Dragon King to have all of them come and worship me. As he spoke, he looked down and said faintly, I will wait for them here. Qin Feiyang said as he held Lu Mingxin's waist and flew directly towards the highest principal's office of Dragon Gate Academy. To have the Dragon King come to worship him, what a big tone. How confident is he to have the Dragon King and the others come to worship him? Is this the confidence that the eternal God Lord passed down to him? To be able to easily suppress a god with one palm, it seems extremely easy. Just how strong is he? Everyone was shocked when they saw Qin Feiyang and Lu Mingxin fly into the Dragon Gate Academy to wait for the Dragon King and the others. No one expected that someone would actually obtain the inheritance of the eternal God Lord. This news quickly spread on the internet. When everyone saw the God Peak god being suppressed at the foot of the Five-Finger Mountain, they were slightly dazed. This person is called Qin Feiyang. He was once a disciple of the Lingxiao Treasured Palace. He disappeared for a year. I didn't expect him to be so powerful now. Back then Qin Feiyang was very weak. Now he can easily suppress a god. The inheritance of an ordinary god is definitely not this powerful. It seems that he really obtained the inheritance of the God Lord. Eternal God Lord. Currently, only the two tombs in the North and South Poles are known to be the divine kingdom of the Eternal God Lord. Did he come from one of these two tombs, or? Soon, someone on the internet dug out the information about Qin Feiyang, which shocked many people. From a small figure at the insightful void level, he could easily suppress the gods after going missing for a year. This was definitely the inheritance of the Eternal God Lord. However, no one knew how powerful Qin Feiyang was now. At the other two academies of Dragon Gate Academy, Consort Ji Ran and another god, Tian Yuanzi, who had received the news, immediately rushed over. At the same time, in the sky above the Dragon Palace, 9 beautiful figures were floating there with a hint of frost on their faces. Let's go out and relax. Let that pervert reflect on himself. The 9 of them were Guan Shuqing and the rest of the women who came out from the Dragon Palace's bedroom. At this moment, their expressions were extremely cold. Although Wang Xian had explained to them earlier, would they believe the words of this pervert? In a fit of anger, the 9 women flew out of the Dragon Palace. Where should we go first? Now that earth and land have become one, even we feel unfamiliar. Lan Qingyue looked around and said faintly, I still have a little disciple here. Let's go find her first and let her show us around. Sun Lingxiu looked at the group of girls and said, Is it that girl Mingxin? Alright, let's go and take a look. Speaking of which, we haven't seen each other for more than 10 years. That girl should have grown up by now. Guan Shuqing and the rest nodded immediately. Let's go. I can still sense the aura of my little disciple. Sun Lingxiu said with a smile. The 9 girls immediately teleported away. Sigh. In the Dragon Palace, Wang Xian shook his head speechlessly as he watched the 9 girls leave. Why don't they believe what I said? I'm telling the truth. Wang Xian felt a headache coming on. At this moment he didn't dare to provoke the girls. It would be fine if it was just one of them, but he could force them to beg for forgiveness. But now it was a group of girls. Especially since they were still united. Forget it, forget it. It's better to hide now. Wang Xian muttered softly. He was not worried about the safety of the few girls. With Lan Qingyue around, no one could hurt them. Furthermore, no one dared to provoke the Dragon Palace. He moved and immediately flew towards the Dragon King's palace. What exactly do you want? In the principal's office at the center of the Dragon Gate Academy, Lu Mingxin was sitting in front of a table. She looked at Qin Feiyang, who was full of arrogance, and asked with an embarrassed expression. Didn't I say it? Take over the entire sky. For your sake, as long as your brother and the Dragon King worship me, I will not make things difficult for them. Qin Feiyang slightly raised his head and looked at Lu Mingxin indifferently. With just you, even if you obtain the inheritance of the Eternal God Lord, you're still not a match for teacher. Lu Mingxin said with a dark face. Ha ha, then wait a while, I'll let you see how the Dragon King kneels in front of me. Qin Feiyang said with a laugh. Oh, coming only 3? At this moment, he gently raised his eyebrows and looked outside. Dean? Outside, Tian Yuanzi, Xiao Ran, and Ji Lingfei arrived above the second Dragon Gate Academy. They looked at the divine peak that was suppressed at the entrance, and their expressions were somewhat solemn. Save the divine peak. As Xiao Ran spoke, the 3 of them immediately moved and attacked the 1,000-meter-wide 5-Finger Mountain. Boom boom boom. The 3 attacks landed on the 5-Finger Mountain. However, what shocked them the most was that the 5-Finger Mountain did not move at all. What? Rise. Xiao Ran's expression changed slightly. He waved his arm and the 8 divine fire pagoda in his hand crashed towards the 5-Finger Mountain. Boom. There was a loud sound. However, what made Xiao Ran's expression extremely grave was that the 5-Finger Mountain still did not move at all. Hiss this. His pupils constricted slightly, and Tian Yuanzi and Ji Lingfei's expressions also changed slightly. Divine Peak, you have to suffer here for a while. They looked at each other and immediately flew towards the center of the academy. This mountain is so terrifying that even Dean Xiao and the others can't break it. Hiss, looks like the Dragon King is going to make a move. I just don't know if the Dragon King and the others are a match for this Qin Feiyang. When everyone around saw this scene, their expressions changed drastically. With just you guys, you won't be able to break my mountain suppression. In the center of Dragon Gate Academy, when Xiao Ran and the others had just flown over, the window automatically opened and Qin Feiyang's faint voice sounded. Chapter 2010. 2010. I shouldn't have been so arrogant in 2010. What do you want to do? Xiao Ran heard the voice and immediately looked into the room. When he saw that Lu Mingxin was not in danger, he heaved a sigh of relief. His gaze was fixed on Qin Feiyang, and his eyes were filled with coldness. Xiao Ran, right? Where's your master, the Dragon King? Let him come and worship me. In the future, this star field will respect me. Qin Feiyang looked at Xiao Ran and the other two calmly and said faintly, Worship you? You can't afford it. When Xiao Ran heard his words, a dense expression appeared on his face. He slowly lifted the 8 divine fire pagoda in his hand. You're too stubborn. I'll teach you a lesson. When Qin Feiyang heard his words, he raised his hand. A 5-fingered mountain appeared in the sky above Xiao Ran. The 1,000-meter-wide 5-fingered mountain emitted a heavy aura as it directly pressed down on him. Stop. Lu Mingxin, who was sitting there, had a slight change in her expression. A bright arrow appeared in front of her and directly attacked Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang glanced indifferently at Lu Mingxin. No one can defy me. Bang! The terrifying 5-fingered mountain fell towards Xiao Ran, causing his expression to change drastically. The 8 divine fire pagoda in his hand released a terrifying flame as it attacked the 5 mountains. However, the flames did not leave any traces on the 5 mountains. This caused Xiao Ran's expression to change drastically. Tian Yuanzi Ji Lingfei immediately made his move. The 5 mountains remained unmoved. Oh no, his strength is too terrifying. Ji Lingfei shouted in fear, No, we have to contact teacher immediately. Boom. The 5 mountains descended and Xiao Ran was directly suppressed below. His face was completely pale. When the surrounding people who had been paying attention to this scene saw this, they once again took a deep breath. They were filled with shock. Another casual attack had suppressed Principal Xiao, who was holding a divine weapon. Is Qin Feiyang's strength invincible? Everyone looked at this scene in shock. When this scene was spread on the internet, the entire world was boiling. The inheritor of the eternal God Lord was so terrifying. At this moment, some people were shaken. Perhaps the inheritor of the eternal God Lord could suppress the Dragon Palace. Too weak. Qin Feiyang looked at Xiao Ran, who was being suppressed, and said indifferently, Let go of my brother. Lu Mingxin roared with fury in her eyes. If they all submit to me, I'll naturally let them go. Qin Feiyang glanced at Lu Mingxin and said indifferently, Principal Ji, we can only inform the Dragon King now. Tian Yuanzi took a deep breath when he saw this scene and looked at Qin Feiyang with a face full of fear. Ji Lingfei nodded slowly. Boss. Just as she was about to inform the Dragon King, the surrounding void trembled slightly. Oh, the Dragon King has received the news? Tian Yuanzi immediately looked over with a hint of joy in his eyes. Is he here? Qin Feiyang also narrowed his eyes slightly and looked towards the direction where the void was shaking. Soon, figures appeared in their sight one by one. Something seems to have happened here? A surprised voice was heard. Guan Shuqing and the other 9 figures appeared and looked around. Qin Feiyang looked at the 9 extremely beautiful women who suddenly appeared and raised his eyebrows slightly. Master's wife, Master's wife. Xiao Ran, who was suppressed underground, raised his head and saw their figures. He was slightly stunned and immediately shouted, Master. When Lu Mingxin saw Sun Lingxiu, her expression was slightly dazed. She also immediately shouted, Oh. Qin Feiyang looked over and sized up Guan Shuqing and the others. Little Xiao Ran. What happened? Guan Shuqing and the others were slightly stunned. They looked at Xiao Ran, who was being suppressed, and frowned. Lan Qingyue waved her hand casually. However, she found that the 5-finger mountain did not move at all. Surprise appeared in her eyes. A special khaki-colored power on her body shook slightly and shook toward the 5-finger mountain. Boss. A special power directly moved the mountain to the side. A godly state expert. Qin Feiyang was surprised when he saw Lan Qingyue move his mountain away. Thank you, mistress. Xiao Ran let out a sigh of relief when he got away from the mountain. He glanced at his mistress and a few unfamiliar figures and bowed. Mingxin, come here. Sun Lingxiu waved her arm and a powerful light force was drawn toward Lu Mingxin. With a flash of light, it immediately caught her in front of him. Master. Lu Mingxin excitedly grabbed Sun Lingxiu's arm and shouted. What happened? Guan Shuqing coldly glanced at Dust Feiyang and asked Xiao Ran and the others. The Dragon King's wife? I asked the Dragon King to come and worship me, And you girls came? Dust Feiyang slightly raised his head and did not stop Sun Lingxiu and the others. He said coldly. He had lost some of his patience. Worship you. What qualifications do you have? Guan Shuqing coldly spoke to him as the aura of a god erupted from her body. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment the other girls also coldly stared at Qin Feiyang. Their faces were filled with ice-cold expressions. The girl's current strength was enough to contend against 2 wisps of divine fire. This was especially true for Fan Qinglan and Lan Qingyue. Fan Qinglan had a special bone dragon body, and Lan Qingyue, as an ancient god-feeding Kuan master, was also extremely terrifying. The 2 of them were able to contend against or even kill 3 wisps of divine fire gods. Terrifying auras soared into the sky and charged towards the dust. In an instant the entire sky was filled with wind and clouds, and the faint image of a divine dragon appeared. Who are the 9 beautiful figures that suddenly appeared? This Dean Xiao actually called them Master's wife. Are they the Dragon King's wives? Hiss, the 9 figures all burst out with the power of the divine realm. I didn't expect that the Dragon King's wives had already ignited the divine fire. Are they here to suppress that dust flying around? In the surrounding areas, some people noticed the sudden appearance of the illusory figures in the middle of the Dragon Gate Academy, and their faces revealed astonishment. 9 beautiful figures, the Dragon Queen? This caused everyone to be slightly stunned. However, as they felt the powerful divine might, they were all extremely shocked. Haha, looks like it's really difficult to invite the Dragon King over. In that case, I'll announce that today, I'll be taking over this piece of sky. If anyone resists, I'll suppress them. I really want to see what that Dragon King is capable of. Qin Feiyang's gaze swept past Guan Shuqing and the other girls with disdain, not paying any attention to their imposing manner. At the same time, his body moved and he directly floated in the sky above Longmen Academy. Qin Feiyang spread his arms, and the divine dragon phantom in the sky instantly disappeared. GGGG. At the same time, a sharp and ear-piercing sound rang out, and countless starry locusts flew out from his body and flew in all directions. In an instant, the starry locusts that blotted out the sun appeared in the void once again. Seeing this scene, everyone's bodies trembled. Chapter 2011. 2011. I shouldn't have been so arrogant in 2011. At this moment, everyone on Earth began to tremble again. The familiar shrill cry covered the entire planet, and the horrifying and ferocious space locusts once again wreaked havoc. Dust flew in the sky and countless space locusts flew out of his body and flew around. 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion, 5 billion. 5 billion space locusts, each 2 to 3 meters in size, blocked the sky. This scene was very similar to the day when the space locusts rampaged. Everyone looked at the space locusts in fear. If it weren't for the appearance of the space beast, many people doubted whether the Dragon Palace could resist so many space locusts. Although there weren't as many space locusts flying out of Qin Feiyang's body as before, there were at least billions of them. The scene that also covered the sky shocked everyone. He must have obtained the inheritance of the North Pole Godly Tomb. The space panicked and entered the North Pole Godly Tomb through the energy pillar. It turns out that he subdued him. It's him. Qin Feiyang must have obtained the inheritance of the North Pole Divine Tomb. Oh my god, those starry sky locusts were attracted by him at that time. So the North Pole Divine Tomb obtained the greatest opportunity from him, the inheritance of the Mountain God Lord. Not long ago, a voice rang out from the North Pole Divine Tomb. I was originally a speck of dust, but now I've covered the stars. At this moment, some people quickly thought of what had happened when the starry sky locusts had just appeared. Moreover, the voice from the North Pole Divine Tomb not long ago immediately made everyone more certain. The successor of the North Pole Divine Tomb, dust flew in the air. Back then, the North and South Pole Divine Tombs had attracted the attention of the entire world. Billions of people from the world had once gone to the North and South Pole Divine Tombs to seek opportunities. However, no one had expected that the greatest opportunity of the North Pole Divine Tomb, the successor of the Master God's inheritance, had now been revealed to the world. Everyone looked at the starry sky that was covered by the space locusts in awe. At this moment the world shook. He provoked the Dragon King. He does have the right. He might even take over the sky for real. Some people murmured and looked at the sky in shock. 5 billion space locusts. Just this many space locusts required the Dragon Palace to mobilize all of its strength. And this was under the condition that Qin Feiyang didn't make a move. If he made a move, wouldn't he be able to suppress the Dragon Palace? Was he really going to take over the sky? Not good. He is the one who obtained the inheritance of the North Pole God Tomb, and he has so many space locusts. Tian Yuanzi's face changed dramatically when he saw this. He could feel how small he was in front of these 5 billion space locusts. Oh no! Xiao Ran, Ji Lingfei and the others' faces changed dramatically, and their eyes were filled with a solemn expression. Master, be careful. We're not his match. Lu Mingxin's heart also sank and she hurriedly said to Sun Lingxiu. Sun Lingxiu, Shu Qing, Feng Wan, and the other girls felt the overwhelming pressure, and their faces also revealed a solemn and shocked expression. This was the first time they were facing so many creatures, and it was also the first time they were facing this space locust. They could sense that they were absolutely not a match for this space locust. Even when facing that youth, they had to be extremely fearful. What should we do? Call that pervert little Xian over? Guan Shuqing said with a slightly embarrassed expression. No need. We don't need to rely on him. Lan Qingyue's eyes sparkled as she stared at the space locusts in the sky. She snorted coldly. Clearly, the group of girls had not completely forgiven Wang Xian. Sisters, let's enter the void. Lan Qingyue waved her arm. A black hole appeared in front of her and she stepped into it directly. Enter. The other girls didn't hesitate. They knew Lan Qingyue's ability. Follow her. Sun Lingxiu said to Lu Mingxin and Xiao Ran, and she led Mingxin into the black hole. Let's go. Xiao Ran pulled Ji Lingfei, who was extremely surprised, and Tian Yuanzi, who was beside her, into the black hole. Buzz. When they appeared again, they were already in the void above the space locust. Huh? Qin Feiyang, who had been watching Guan Shuqing and the others from below, raised his eyebrows slightly when he saw them disappear into the black hole. Did you run away? Hee, do you want me to go to the Dragon Palace personally? He said indifferently, his voice spreading across the entire sky. Everyone below opened their mouths slightly and watched in shock. Run. You don't have the right to let us run. At this moment, Lan Qingyue's cold voice rang out in the air. Looks like I'll have to completely suppress all of you. Qin Feiyang's eyes revealed a cold expression. He raised his head slightly and the space locusts in the sky took the initiative to open up a path. Buzz. Following that, under everyone's shocked gazes, his body slowly grew larger. At a speed visible to the naked eye, his body, which was less than 2 meters long, grew to several thousand meters in size. An aura that was as heavy as a mountain and as tall as a mountain was emitted from his body. His body gave people a feeling that it was like a mountain. GGGG. Tens of millions of space locusts flew behind him and condensed into a pair of enormous locust wings. Qin Feiyang slowly flew into the void. Hiss. Below, everyone looked at this scene in horror. This posture is really invincible. Everyone took a deep breath and stared at the void. Unfortunately, the space locusts that filled the sky completely covered their vision. Bloodline constitution, my pet loves it the most. Lan Qingyue saw Qin Feiyang's body that was thousands of meters long fly hundreds of thousands of meters into the air, and a cold expression appeared on her face. Master, that Qin Feiyang is very strong. Lu Mingxin saw Qin Feiyang's power and said to Sun Lingxiu with a worried expression. Sun Lingxiu shook her head at her, indicating that there was no need to worry. I don't like to kill women, but I will suppress all of you and the Dragon King. Qin Feiyang stared at Guan Shuqing and the others coldly and waved his arm lightly. Eternal Mountain. With a low roar, an incomparably huge mountain appeared in the void. The mountain was tens of thousands of meters long and was even more terrifying than the one that suppressed Xiao Ran and the others. When they saw this mountain, Xiao Ran and the others' faces were filled with solemnity and worry. Little Blue, get ready to eat. Lan Qingyue stared at Qin Feiyang, and her body trembled slightly. Woo woo. An incomparably dull sound rang out of thin air. Slowly, a black hole that was over 100 kilometers in size appeared behind Lan Qingyue. A terrifying head slowly drilled out of the black hole. It was filled with excitement as it stared at the surrounding space locusts, staring at Qin Feiyang. Bloodline, physique and so on. Cohen favorite. Chapter 2012. 2012 begged for mercy. Woo woo. In the void, within a 100-kilometer radius of the black hole, an incomparably huge figure stretched out. After it swept past the space locusts and dust fluttering in the air. Its gaze looked at Lan Qingyue in front of it and let out a faint coquettish sound. "You've grown up, you're even a little fat." Lan Qingyue's face was full of smiles as she touched the area under its eyelids. A trace of a smile appeared on her face. When she was in seclusion, Little Blue's body was only dozens of kilometers in size. Now, it was more than 300 kilometers in size. Moreover, its entire body looked a little bloated and much fatter. It could be seen that Little Blue's food was very good during this period of time. Soon it's time to eat again. As Lan Qingyue said this, she gently jumped onto Little Blue's body and stared at the stunned dust flying in front of her. This is Little Blue? The Little Blue from before. Hiss, the space beast that day was actually the Dragon King's wife's pet, this. At this moment, Tian Yuanzi, Xiao Ran and Ji Lingfei, who were standing at the side, had shocked expressions on their faces. This was especially so for Tian Yuanzi and Ji Lingfei. This was the first time they had seen Lan Qingyue and the others. On the day when the space locusts were wreaking havoc, the space beast that had suddenly appeared was actually the pet of the Dragon Queen of the Dragon Palace. This news was simply too shocking. The Dragon Palace is too heaven-defying. Each and every one of their trump cards is completely unfathomable. Tian Yuanzi couldn't help but feel fortunate for his choice at that time. Now, it seemed that even if they were twice as powerful, they might not be able to do anything to the Dragon Palace, let alone the Lingxiao treasured palace and the Sacred Hall. Cough cough. However, at this moment, Qin Feiyang, who had a majestic and invincible look on his face, had a drastic change in expression. He widened his eyes and stared at Little Blue in front of him in disbelief. What the hell? When he was in the Divine Tomb, he had seen this space beast, especially after it had swallowed hundreds of billions of space locusts. At that time, he had a strong premonition that he was no match for this space beast. At that time, the space beast's size was only 200 kilometers, and now it had increased by more than 100 kilometers. He would never have thought that this space beast was actually the Dragon King's wife's pet. Escape, this is too dangerous, escape into the Divine Tomb. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Qin Feiyang was panicking. He had just received the inheritance of the Eternal God Lord, and now he had ignited 7 wisps of divine fire. Coupled with his special physique, he was confident that he could look down on everything. Even if he returned to the boundless star field, he was still a figure in the entire star field. At that time, everyone in the family who looked down on him would have to kneel respectfully in front of him. But now he had encountered such a terrifying existence. He didn't want to die. It wasn't easy for him to obtain the inheritance of the Eternal God Lord. If he died, he wouldn't be able to rest in peace. Eternal mountains, starry locusts. He waved his arm, and the mountain in the sky smashed towards Little Blue. At the same time, hundreds of millions of starry locusts flew towards Little Blue. Go! After releasing his attack, he flapped his huge wings without any hesitation and fled towards the North Pole. He escaped. Lu Mingxin, Tian Yuanzi, Xiao Ran, and the others saw Qin Feiyang escape and opened their mouths slightly. That extremely arrogant guy who wanted to suppress all of them, the inheritor of the Eternal God Lord, actually escaped after attacking. This was completely different from his invincibility just now. Little Blue, don't let him escape. Lan Qingyue immediately said when she saw that he wanted to escape. But Little Blue's body trembled slightly, and the black hole behind him expanded at a terrifying speed. In a short moment, the black hole instantly covered the entire void, covering all the space locusts and Qin Feiyang's bodies. What is this thing? When Qin Feiyang was enveloped by the black hole, a shocked expression appeared on his face. Soon after, everyone felt that they had appeared in another void. On Earth, when everyone looked at the sky, they instantly realized that everything had disappeared. The sky returned to its previous state. What happened? Why did everything disappear? What happened in the void? Why did everything disappear? Everyone looked at this scene in shock. The space locust that blotted out the sky disappeared, and so did the tall and sturdy Qin Feiyang. Even the Dragon Queen and Dean Xiao of the Dragon Palace had disappeared. Is this the divine ability of the Eternal God Lord? Some people murmured. It was very difficult for a godly state expert to do such a terrifying scene. Only an existence like the Eternal God Lord could do it. Did Qin Feiyang suppress Ding Xiao and the others, or? They were full of doubts. What? What is this place? What is this place? Wait, don't attack. However, what everyone didn't know was that at this moment in the Kuan region, Qin Feiyang was looking around with a panicked expression. In a pitch-black void space there seemed to be no end. In this place there was only the group of them. In front of them was that incomparably huge space beast. Around them were his 5 billion space locusts. This was the first time Qin Feiyang had encountered such a place. After all, he was only a small character at the insightful void realm. He had not experienced too many battles. He had become a god who had ignited 7 wisps of divine fire in a single leap. His knowledge had not increased much. Even if it was the mountain god lord's inheritance, he had not completely absorbed it. At this moment he was completely panicking. In the end, he was a nouveau riche who had suddenly erupted. Woo. Little Blue did not pay any attention to Qin Feiyang. It opened its mouth slightly, and the entire space trembled slightly. GGG. At this moment, the group of starry locusts behind him revealed a terrified expression. Tens of millions of starry locusts were sucked into Little Blue's mouth. Damn it. If you have something to say it properly. Qin Feiyang quickly shouted. Lan Qingyue and the others stared at him coldly, their faces full of mockery. Didn't you want to suppress us? Guan Shuqing's lips curled up slightly as she asked indifferently. Woo. As soon as she finished speaking, the surrounding space trembled again. Xiaolan let out a joyful sound as hundreds of millions of space locusts flew toward Xiaolan's mouth. Qin Feiyang's expression changed drastically as he stared fixedly at Little Blue. He could feel a thick sense of threat from Little Blue's body. His gaze swept across the surrounding void as he clenched his fists tightly. Everyone, I was wrong. I shouldn't have been so arrogant. Look, I didn't hurt you. Can we shake hands and make peace? Qin Feiyang clenched his teeth and said loudly with a dark face. He didn't want to die because he had just received the God Lord's inheritance. After receiving all the inheritance, he had a lifespan of 1,000,000 years. If he died today, he would suffer a great loss. Chapter 2013. 2013 begged for mercy. It was not that Qin Feiyang was cowardly, but that he was facing a void behemoth like Little Blue, which made him feel extremely fearful. Now that he was trapped in the void, it was already considered good that he did not shout for mercy. Having just obtained the inheritance of the eternal God Lord, he had just started to show off and was about to fall into a life-and-death situation. This was obviously not what he wanted to see. Shake hands and make peace? Didn't you say that you were going to suppress us? Guan Shuqing and the others were slightly stunned when they heard Qin Feiyang's words, and they said mockingly. This was the first time they had met such a cowardly fellow. He wanted to shake hands and make peace even before the fight had officially begun. I'm joking. Qin Feiyang felt a little humiliated at this moment. However, when he saw the surrounding space locusts entering Little Blue's body one after another, his heart ached terribly. He said with a dark face. Are you kidding me? If you're kidding me, then we'll suppress you. It's also a joke. Sun Lingxiu looked at him and said lightly. I'm pursuing him. I didn't hurt her. Qin Feiyang said with an extremely embarrassed expression. It's useless to say so much. If we kill you, the divine tomb at the North Pole will belong to us. Moreover, Xiaolan's favorite food is people with a special physique like you. Lan Qingyue stared at him coldly and said. Don't force me. Qin Feiyang revealed an angry expression when he heard Lan Qingyue's words. It's already a life-and-death battle, and you still want to force me? What a childish guy. Feng Yuan looked at Qin Feiyang with contempt in her eyes. Even though her strength was much weaker than Qin Feiyang's, her aura and posture as an expert were much stronger. This was the posture of an expert who came up from the bottom step by step. It was fine if Qin Feiyang was in front of the weak, but in front of an expert there was no foundation. Little Blue, attack. Lan Qingyue lightly shouted. Woo. A shocking sound was heard. Little Blue stared at Qin Feiyang, and its huge body directly collided with him. Don't provoke me. I have a mountain body and I use my body to cross the void. A space beast, do you really think I'm afraid of you? Qin Feiyang heard Feng Yuan's ridicule and saw Little Blue who was attacking him. His face revealed a violent expression. His body size crazily increased once again. His muscles bulged high and his body size reached over 10,000 meters. His entire person was like a mountain that ran amok in the void. Get lost. He clenched his fists. His mountain-like arm emitted an earthen yellow light as he heavily met Xiaolan. Boom. A terrifying collision sounded. At this moment, Qin Feiyang knew what it meant to be a mantis trying to stop a chariot. An extremely terrifying power attacked him, and cracks slowly appeared on his arm. His entire body flew backwards. At this moment, Qin Feiyang's face was completely filled with panic. As the inheritor of the mountain physique, he was most proud of his powerful physical strength. However, in the face of this space beast, his strongest physical strength was completely crushed. This caused Qin Feiyang to be completely terrified. Pooh! He spat out a mouthful of blood and his body flew backwards. Little Blue's body trembled. He moved his huge body and continued to attack him. I admit defeat. I surrender. I admit defeat. Don't kill me. Qin Feiyang looked at Little Blue who continued to attack him and hurriedly shouted. Is there any use in begging for mercy? Lan Qingyue said indifferently. Sisters, I was wrong. I was really wrong. It wasn't easy for me to obtain the God Lord's inheritance. There are still some treasures in the God Tomb. I'll give them all to you. Qin Feiyang hurriedly dodged to the side and shouted loudly. However, what made him feel terrified was that this empty space seemed to be a circular shape. He was actually unable to fly out of this space. This made him even more panicked. I surrender, I surrender. Don't kill me, Beauty Lumingxin. I didn't hurt you at that time. Tell your master and the others to stop. I admit my mistake. Qin Feiyang saw that Lan Qingyue was unmoved. His body once again collided with Little Blue's. He felt an incomparable pain in his chest and immediately shouted loudly. Lu Mingxin looked at Qin Feiyang's pathetic escape, and her face was full of astonishment. At first, when Qin Feiyang forcefully restrained her, he said that it was her honor to have taken a fancy to her, but now, this look was completely different. But there was one thing that he was right about, and that was that he didn't hurt her from the beginning. Master Lu Mingxin looked at her own son Lingxiu and wanted to say something, but she stopped herself. Sun Lingxiu also raised her eyebrows slightly. She looked at Qin Feiyang who was begging for mercy, and called out to Lan Qingyue softly, Qingyue. Boss. Lan Qingyue moved slightly and Xiaolan stopped moving. Her huge eyes were still locked on him with incomparable coldness. Thank you all goddesses. I admit my mistake. I surrender. Qin Feiyang saw that Little Blue had finally stopped, and he panted heavily as he said immediately, Take us to the North Pole God Tomb. Lan Qingyue said to Qin Feiyang calmly. Yes, I will take you there now. Qin Feiyang nodded with a bitter face, resigned to his fate. Before that, eat this. Lan Qingyue moved her hand and took out an item that looked like meat from Little Blue's body, and threw it directly in front of Qin Feiyang. This is? Qin Feiyang looked at the wriggling meatball and his expression changed slightly. Little Blue's special constitution will take root in your constitution. If you have any thoughts, I can destroy you instantly. Lan Qingyue said to him very honestly. Qin Feiyang's expression changed greatly. Die now. Swallow this and choose one. Lan Qingyue did not give him any time to hesitate. She directly said indifferently. He begged for mercy, but in order to prevent any accidents, he had to leave some methods behind. After he swallowed Little Blue's Kuan characteristic, it would enter his mountain constitution. In the future, with just a thought from Lan Qingyue, he could instantly die. I'll swallow. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath, his heart filled with sorrow. He still wanted to suppress the world and take over the sky, but now he was being suppressed. Perhaps he was the most miserable eternal God Lord inheritance holder in the universe. Qin Feiyang swallowed the flesh with an ugly expression. Let's go. Lan Qingyue saw him swallow and looked at Guan Shuqing and the others. Let's go, I haven't seen what the eternal God Lord's eternal kingdom looks like. This is the eternal God Lord. Guan Shuqing and the other girls looked interested and immediately said, Lead the way. Lan Qingyue patted Little Blue and said to Qin Feiyang. Yes. Chapter 2014. 2014 Shake hands and make peace. GGG. In the sky above Earth, while everyone was still discussing what had just happened, in the next moment, the densely packed space locusts once again appeared in the void. Unlike the space locusts from before, the number was clearly reduced by 1/5. What's going on? The appearance of the space locusts once again caused everyone's faces to reveal astonishment. Immediately after, under everyone's stunned gazes, the countless void locusts flew towards the north. What's going on? The void locusts have appeared once again? Everyone's faces were filled with confusion, but before they could think any further, the countless void locusts quickly disappeared once again. It was as if nothing had happened. This caused everyone's faces to be filled with greetings. What happened? We can confirm that Qin Feiyang should be fine. Where are Principal Xiao and the others? Could they have been killed by Qin Feiyang? What kind of ability is this sudden disappearance and sudden appearance? This is simply inconceivable. Everyone was discussing in bewilderment. They did not understand what was going on. Is this the center of the eternal divine kingdom? What a powerful aura. Also, this divine kingdom is so big that it is even bigger than the Dragon Palace. When Guan Shuqing and the others entered the divine tomb, they were all surprised. Of course, this is the divine kingdom of the Mountain God Lord. Back then, the Mountain God Lord used his body to suppress everything. The eternal divine kingdom is naturally not the Dragon Palace. Qin Feiyang heard their exclamations and said proudly. However, before she could finish her words, she felt that something was wrong and immediately shut her mouth. See if there are any items that can be moved into the Dragon Palace. Move all the useful things over. Guan Shuqing looked around and said indifferently. Yes. Where is the medicinal garden of your eternal divine kingdom? Take us to the medicinal garden. We will move the medicinal garden into the Dragon Palace. Lan Qingyue and the others nodded in agreement. Qin Feiyang opened his mouth and spat out some blood. His face was even more embarrassed than if he had eaten shit. However, his expression soon became even more unsightly. The group of girls had kept their word and emptied the entire medicinal garden. Other than all the valuable treasures in the medicinal garden, all of them had been removed. Qin Feiyang's heart was bleeding. Take these for the time being. Let's go. After all the valuable items had been taken away, Guan Shuqing and the rest said as they flew out. Qin Feiyang, Big Brother Shinfeng is still being suppressed by you at the entrance of Dragon Gate Academy. Come with us and let Big Brother Shinfeng out. Lu Mingxin said to Qin Feiyang and called him over. He nodded in resignation. Now that his life was in the hands of others, he did not dare to disagree. Boss. When they arrived above Dragon Gate Academy, Qin Feiyang waved his arm, and the five-finger mountain that was suppressing Shinfeng instantly dissipated. What's going on? Qin Feiyang is actually standing together with Ding Xiao and the others? What the hell is going on? Did Qin Feiyang subdue Ding Xiao and the others, or what? Around them, some people who had not yet left saw Qin Feiyang and Xiao Ran's group suddenly appear in the sky, and their faces were filled with astonishment. Especially when they saw Xiao Ran and Qin Feiyang standing together so peacefully. Xiao Ran Shinfeng broke free from the mountain and immediately flew into the sky. He stared at Qin Feiyang vigilantly with an awkward expression. He has already been. Haha, I have already shaken hands with Xiao Ran and the others. Now that Earth is heading to the boundless star field, we have to plan for the next few things. In the future, I am prepared to live in peace with him. I, Qin Feiyang, have obtained the inheritance of the Eternal Master. In the future, I will be the Eternal God Lord who will suppress an entire region. Now that I think about it, suppressing a small Earth is meaningless. Xiao Ran was about to open his mouth to speak, but before he could finish, Qin Feiyang, who was by his side, immediately interrupted him. His voice that was filled with pride resounded throughout the entire sky, as if he was afraid that others would not hear it. Che shameless. When Lu Mingxin heard his words, a disdainful expression appeared on her face as she said disdainfully. The corners of Xiao Ran and Tian Yuanzi's mouths twitched. They had not realized that this fellow was actually so shameless. However, they did not interrupt him. No matter what, Qin Feiyang had the strength to ignite the 7 wisps of divine fire. He had a special constitution, and his strength was incomparably terrifying. If they hadn't been suppressed by the space beast of the Dragon Queen, they would have been in trouble. Shake hands to make peace? Didn't he say he was going to take over the sky? Why did he shake hands to make peace all of a sudden? I don't know. Maybe it was because of some reasons that they didn't continue fighting. Or maybe the Dragon Palace has the same strength as him, which made them afraid. This is very likely. The Dragon Palace's strength should not be weaker than the Eternal God Lord's successor, that's why they didn't continue fighting. When the surrounding people heard Qin Feiyang's words, their faces revealed contemplative expressions as they discussed. This was the only possibility for the current situation. Otherwise, how could they explain Qin Feiyang shaking hands with Xiao Ran and the others to make peace? When Qin Feiyang heard the discussion below, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He did not want his voice domain to be destroyed in an instant. He was the inheritor of the Eternal God Lord. If others knew that he was being controlled, how embarrassing would that be? He had finally obtained such a rare opportunity to become an expert. He still had to maintain his face. Lu Mingxin saw the corner of his mouth curling up slightly and could not help but let out a soft snort once again. Hee hee. When Qin Feiyang heard her voice, he smiled and turned to look at Lu Mingxin. That. Miss Lu Mingxin, do you have time to have a meal together? He said to Lu Mingxin with a smile on his face. Originally, Lu Mingxin was a goddess-level existence to her, and he had already made up his mind to take her into his pocket. But now that there was a huge accident, he couldn't take her in an overbearing manner, but he could pursue it. Moreover, he had already thought of something along the way. Lu Mingxin was the disciple of one of the Dragon King's wives, and the one who controlled his life and death was the other wife of the Dragon King. She was also Lu Mingxin's teacher's good sister. Now, only by gaining a relationship with the Dragon King could his little life be 100% guaranteed. And if he wanted to have a relationship with the Dragon King, he could only start with Xiao Ran and Lu Mingxin. This was good. He made up his mind and began to pursue Lu Mingxin. This way, not only would he be able to obtain beautiful women, but his little life would also be better guaranteed. You get lost. Lu Mingxin's face turned red as she said fiercely to him. Hee hee, I still have some treasures here that can help Goddess Mingxin ignite the divine fire. Qin Feiyang said as he took out some treasures from his body and handed them over with a smile. Lu Mingxin's face was flushed red. She was slightly stunned when she saw the precious treasures. Good, you actually still have some treasures on you? Chapter 2015. 2015 I returned in 2015. Cough cough cough. I hid some treasures in the end. Now, I'll give them to Goddess Mingxin. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows, coughed and said with a smile. He had the body of a mountain and could store items in his body. Although most of the treasures in the god tomb had been taken away by the group of women, he still had some treasures in his hands. These treasures were enough for Lu Mingxin to ignite the divine fire. I'll take it for my sister. There's no need to eat. We still have things to do. Xiao Ran said as he directly took the items in Qin Feiyang's hands and said faintly to him. Then he gestured to Lu Mingxin and the others and the group immediately left. This. Sigh, at least leave a contact number. When Qin Feiyang saw this scene, his face turned black, and he immediately shouted. However, Xiao Ran, Lu Mingxin, and the rest ignored him and flew into the distance. Forget it, let's take it slow. Qin Feiyang's expression changed, and a hint of bitterness appeared on his face. If it wasn't for that space beast, the sky would be under his control now and he could do whatever he wanted. Now, what's going on? Qin Feiyang seems to be pursuing Goddess Lu Mingxin. It's true. Is this the reason why Qin Feiyang didn't make an enemy of the Dragon Palace? A hero can't defeat a beauty. Qin Feiyang actually wants to pursue Ding Zhao's sister. The people below were stunned when they saw this scene. They didn't expect such a thing to happen. The inheritor of the North Pole tomb, Qin Feiyang, has made peace with the Dragon Palace in order to prepare for the arrival of Earth in the boundless star field in the future. A hero can't overcome a beauty. The inheritor of the Eternal God Lord didn't make an enemy of the Dragon Palace because he pursued Ding Zhao's sister? How terrifying is God Qin Feiyang's strength? It is known that he caused the space locust disaster last time. Now he has at least a few billion space locusts. Is he able to contend with the Dragon Palace? Qin Feiyang has at least the strength of the Dragon Palace. Otherwise he wouldn't have ended so peacefully. He has billions of space locusts. This is too terrifying. Is this the power of the inheritance of the Eternal God Lord? The Dragon King and the Dragon Palace are already heaven-defying. I didn't expect Qin Feiyang to be even more terrifying. News of what happened today quickly spread on the internet. In the North Pole graveyard, the appearance of the inheritor of the Eternal God Lord and the space locust that blotted out the sky reappeared. In particular, Qin Feiyang's terrifying strength and the battle that almost happened with the Dragon Palace shocked everyone. This time, even if Qin Feiyang didn't show his true strength, just the space locust that blotted out the sky had a basic concept in their minds. To be able to match the Dragon Palace, not bad, not bad. However, at this moment, the person that countless people were discussing on the internet was sitting in front of the computer and posting non-stop. When he saw that the post that was comparable to the Dragon Palace and the Dragon King was pushed up, the corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth curled up slightly, and a trace of satisfaction appeared on his face. There was nothing he could do. After all, a year ago Qin Feiyang was still a small figure, and some vanity and the mentality of a loser couldn't be changed. Today he was still trying to gain face for himself, even if it was not in accordance with the facts. He browsed through the posts he had posted. There were a few thousand of them. After he browsed through them with satisfaction, he turned off his computer. Next, I have to think of a way to catch up with Lu Mingxin. I, the successor of the eternal God Lord, am really miserable. Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. In the next few days, everything returned to normal. However, in these few days, Dragon Gate Academy had an additional figure that attracted everyone's attention. It was Qin Feiyang, the heir of the eternal God Lord of the North Pole Godly Tomb. The students of Dragon Gate Academy could often see Qin Feiyang sticking by the side of their vice principal Lu Mingxin every day. They didn't dare to ask and they didn't dare to say. After all, this was a top-notch expert with monstrous strength. His strength was probably the highest in the entire earth. The opportunity left behind by this eternal god is indeed very terrifying. At this moment, in the Dragon Palace, Wang Xian looked at the resources that Lan Qingyue and the rest brought back with a shocked expression. Just the godly state-level spiritual herbs alone had reached more than 100 stalks. There were all kinds of metal information and godly state-level elixirs. There was even a huge pile of them. These resources were enough for Wang Xian to level up. This should be considered a small amount. During the war hundreds of thousands of years ago, the mountain god must have used up a lot of resources. Otherwise, the treasures of a god lord wouldn't be so small. Huarkaier, who was sitting at the side, stared at the treasures in front of her with a twinkle in her eyes. How is it, Xiaoxian? We've just arrived and we've already obtained so many resources. It should be enough for you to level up. Guan Shuqing, Lan Qingyue, and the rest glanced at Hua and Kaier who were at the side. They raised their heads slightly and said to Wang Xian, "It's enough." Wang Xian nodded and said while licking his face, "My wives are awesome." Humph. When Guan Shuqing and the rest saw him like this, they snorted softly. "Oh right, how is the inheritor of the eternal god doing now? If Ao Crab or the Dragon Palace were to devour the eternal kingdom, they would be of great use." Wang Xian continued to ask them with a smile. If the Dragon Palace was to be upgraded again, it would need to devour 9 eternal kingdoms. Furthermore, if he was able to devour an eternal kingdom, his strength would definitely be greatly enhanced. Qin Feiyang is now under my control. He didn't hurt Xiao Ran, Lu Mingxin and the rest, nor did he have the intention to kill them. We didn't kill him. Lan Qingyue said to Wang Xian. That guy seems to be pursuing Mingxin now. He's also a shameless person. Sun Lingxiu said with a smile. Sister Lingxiu, what do you mean he's also a shameless person? Is there anyone else? I don't know about shameless people, but there should be a pervert. After Sun Lingxiu finished her sentence, a few girls suddenly took over the conversation and started mocking her. I'll go and raise my level first. The corner of Wang Xian's mouth twitched. He immediately walked to the side. He could sense pairs of eyes staring at him. Time passed slowly. As Earth traveled through the chaotic starfield in the void, they encountered trouble one after another. However, this time, without the Dragon Palace's help, Qin Feiyang could easily take care of him. This also allowed everyone to witness the terrifying strength of the inheritor of the eternal God Lord. A meteorite about the size of Earth was directly shattered by Qin Feiyang. The terrifying strength shocked everyone. While the Earth was peaceful, in the South Pole graveyard, Suiyin was kneeling in front of a radiant divine tiger with burning eyes. I finally recovered 10% of my strength, but I've used up all my resources. It's time to go out. Chapter 2016. 2016. In 2016 I returned. Lord God Lord Lightwing's might is like a prison. His appearance this time will definitely be able to suppress everything. In the South Pole graveyard, Suiyin respectfully prostrated in front of God Lord Lightwing and shouted loudly. The divine light tiger in front of him was God Lord Lightwing, a supreme expert who had been in charge of this starry sky hundreds of thousands of years ago. God Lord Lightwing's name had once shaken an entire star field. During that great battle, the gods had fallen, and many eternal god masters had also fallen. However, the divine Lightwing master at that time had made all the preparations in advance. Before he died, he had left behind a trace of divine blood, waiting for the day of his resurrection. Unfortunately, the silence on Earth and the disappearance of spiritual energy had not allowed him to recover. He had only obtained this opportunity after hundreds of thousands of years. In this star field, the god lords have all fallen. Only I have been resurrected. Even if I have only recovered 1/10 of my strength, it is still not something that other creatures can compare to. I want to recover my former glory. The god lord of light wings stood on the top of the sacred mountain, his gaze sweeping over everything around him. This time, the recovery of the spiritual energy on this planet is a little strange. There are quite a few gods that have been resurrected. If I want to reach the peak again, I will need a large number of resources and subordinates. As he spoke, he looked down at Suiyin. Go and investigate how many gods and experts there are on this planet. After that, I will open up my eternal divine kingdom and recruit disciples. The god lord of light wings said indifferently. His eyes were filled with endless majesty. If you don't step into my divine mansion, I will kill you and turn you into resources to recover my strength. I will prepare to step into the boundless star field. When Suiyin heard God Lord Lightwing's words, his heart trembled slightly. However, his face was filled with excitement. Lord God Lord, when you step into the boundless star area, I will convince all the gods in the Fire God Palace to join you. He immediately said loudly. Yes, I will not mistreat you. God Lord Lightwing said to him. Thank you, Lord God Lord. Flintstone crept more reverently. After a moment of hesitation, he said, Lord God, my brothers and sisters from the Fire God Palace have descended to earth. Now they have all been killed by the Dragon King. I, Suiyin, have luckily escaped with my life. I hope that you will allow me to kill the person who killed my brothers and sisters. Yes. God Lord Guangyi nodded and waved his arm. Roar, roar, roar. Many divine tigers condensed from light energy flew over and landed behind Suiyin. 5 divine tigers condensed from light divine pearls. The strongest one has the strength of 6 wisps of divine fire. 4 have the strength of 5 wisps of divine fire. They are enough for you to kill all your enemies. Go. 2 days later, I will open up my divine kingdom and recruit all the experts into my divine kingdom to worship. God Lord Guangyi's imposing voice resounded in the surroundings. Thank you, God Lord. In the future, my life will be yours. Suiyin shouted loudly. He lowered his head and revealed a savage expression. Go. God Lord Guangyi said indifferently. He turned around and leaped lightly, stepping onto another divine mountain. Huff, huff. Suiyin's breathing quickened as he stood up. He looked at the 5 divine tigers of light behind him, his face burning with passion. 5 divine tigers of light. The strongest one is comparable to 6 wisps of divine fire. Dragon King, this time I'm going to dismember the 5 of you. As he spoke, his face was filled with a sinister expression. He leaped and directly jumped onto the divine tiger of light in the middle. Let's go. Follow me to receive the world's worship and listen to the screams of those damned people. Ah. Suiyin laughed loudly. The 500-meter-long divine light tigers leaped lightly and flew towards the location outside the eternal divine kingdom. Around the South Pole divine tomb, even though this divine tomb had appeared for more than a year, not a single person had entered it. There were still millions of people searching nearby. They were looking forward to the day when they could enter the divine tomb and obtain opportunities. Especially after everyone on Earth had witnessed Qin Feiyang's strength. Qin Feiyang was originally a small figure at the insightful void level. It was because he had obtained the inheritance of the eternal God Lord that he was now awe-inspiring in the entire world. They also hoped that they could obtain the inheritance of the eternal God Lord. Sai, we've been searching here for half a month, but there are still no clues. We don't dare to go to the Stairs of Light either. In the past year, dozens of demigod-level experts have died on the Stairs of Light. At the entrance of the South Pole Divine Tomb, more than 10 people looked at the Stairs of Light helplessly. This was the entrance of the Divine Tomb, but even gods couldn't enter it. Haha, I'm back, I'm back. At this moment, a cold laughter sounded. The voice wasn't very loud. If it wasn't at the entrance to the god's tomb, this voice wouldn't have been heard. Oh, it's the voice from inside the god's tomb. At this moment, the dozen or so people at the entrance were slightly stunned. They immediately looked inside the god's tomb. Some people around also heard this voice and looked over in astonishment. There are figures coming out. Suddenly, a young man shouted excitedly. At the entrance of the divine tomb, 500-meter-tall figures slowly walked out. Under the cover of the light, the 5 figures looked dignified. It's 5 divine tigers. There's someone on top of the divine tigers, there's actually a person. When the 5 divine tigers walked down the stairs, everyone's faces were filled with awe. When they saw the figure on top of the divine tigers, their eyes widened, filled with shock. Wong. At this moment, everyone saw the 5 divine tigers suddenly increase their speed, appearing in front of the 10+ people. At this moment, the dozen people were completely stunned. Their bodies trembled as they knelt on the ground and looked at the 5 terrifying godly tigers in front of them in shock. Where is the Dragon King? At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. Immediately after, the dozen people felt that their bodies were suspended in the air. The dozen people's faces were filled with shock. When they saw Suiyan's face, their faces were slightly shocked. Sir Suiyan, the Dragon King is in the Dragon Palace, in the Dragon Palace. The dozen or so people hurriedly replied. Dragon Palace? What is the Dragon Palace? Suiyan slightly narrowed his eyes and asked coldly. Sir, it's in the ocean. The dozen or so people immediately said, their foreheads full of cold sweat. At the same time, their hearts were extremely shocked. Suiyan, everyone knew that the gods who had descended back then, the strongest person in the Fire God Palace. More than a year ago, he was suppressed by the Dragon King's subordinates in the South Pole Divine Tomb. Suiyan carried the divine weapon and rushed to the sky above the divine tomb. Everyone thought that he was dead, but they didn't expect that Suiyan was still alive. Could it be that he had received the God Lord's inheritance in the South Pole Divine Tomb? Chapter 2017. 2017, I return from the Divine Tomb. Ocean? Suiyan narrowed his eyes flashing with a crazy killing intent. No matter where you are, I will kill your Dragon King today. I will kill all of your relatives one by one. He growled in a low voice with a sinister face. When the more than 10 people who were suspended in the air heard his voice, their faces were filled with shock. He actually wanted to kill the Dragon King. He had come back to take revenge. Show me the way. Suiyan waved his arm, and a ball of flame enveloped the dozen or so people. The 5 divine light tigers beneath him immediately soared tens of thousands of meters into the air. But suddenly when he looked to the east, his expression changed slightly. In the void in the east, the once incomparably eye-catching Lingxiao treasured palace was now in tatters. The divine light on it had completely disappeared. What happened to the Lingxiao treasured palace? Suiyan's eyes flickered as he asked the dozen or so people in front of him. My lord, the Lingxiao treasured palace and the sacred hall have all been destroyed by the Dragon King. Now in the entire earth, the Dragon King's dragon palace is the strongest force. They have 20 to 30 godly state experts. Even a group of true dragon sons of heaven have submitted to the Dragon King. The dozen or so people didn't dare to hide anything and immediately said to him. What? 20 to 30 godly state expert subordinates? Suiyan was slightly stunned, and a trace of solemnity appeared on his face. Then how strong are the Dragon King and the others? He immediately asked with a gloomy face. We don't know. We only know that the Dragon King is very, very strong, but we don't know exactly how strong he is. The dozen or so people shook their heads. Their knowledge had not reached such a level yet, so they did not know exactly how strong the Dragon King and the others were. Other than the Dragon King, are there any other forces? Suiyan's face darkened as he continued to ask. Yes, one is Qin Feiyang, the successor of the North Pole God Tomb Mountain's God Lord. His strength is very terrifying. The other is the Dragon Gate Academy, which has 4 gods. However, the founder of the Dragon Gate Academy is the Dragon King's disciple, Xiao Ran. Currently, the Dragon King's strength is basically invincible. The subordinates of the Dragon King are also very powerful. Shut up. As the dozen or so people spoke, the expression on Suiyan's face became even gloomier. With an embarrassed expression, he roared in a low voice and waved his hand. Buzz. A ball of flame directly penetrated the bodies of the dozen or so people, turning them into ashes in an instant. He didn't even let out a miserable cry. I didn't expect that your Dragon King would actually destroy the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and the Sacred Hall. Back then, Yuan Kuei of the Lingxiao Treasured Palace and Luke Owen of the Sacred Hall were about the same strength as me. Even if they had broken through, they would still have 5 wisps of divine fire. If the Dragon King and the others were able to destroy Lingxiao and the Sacred Hall, they would definitely have the strength of 6 wisps of divine fire. There's also an inheritor of the God Lord. This really surprised me. If I were to take revenge, it might really be a little difficult. Unfortunately, you've met the God Lord Lightwing, the true eternal God Lord. Dragon King? The inheritor of the God Lord? In front of the eternal God Lord, all of you will die. Sui Yin's expression was incomparably malevolent as he roared in a low voice. The Dragon King's strength made him very surprised. Right now, he didn't even dare to guarantee that he would be able to kill the Dragon King. However, there was still the God Lord. With the God Lord backing him, the Dragon King would definitely die. Even if I can't kill you with my own hands right now, I'll still let you feel the pain. Dragon King, welcome my revenge, ha. He laughed ferociously and moved. With a wave of his arm, several tens of thousands of meters below him, the young men who were looking at him in shock were instantly pulled over by a terrifying force. Sir, don't kill us, don't kill us. The 3 young men were caught and their faces instantly revealed expressions of fear. They immediately begged for mercy loudly. Bring me to Dragon Gate Academy, Sui Yin said coldly. Yes, 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 sir. The 3 young men hurriedly nodded in fear and pointed in the direction of Dragon Gate Academy. Go. Sui Yin rode on the Divine Tiger of Light and immediately flew in the direction of Longmen Academy. That god Sui Yin from the throne of the Fire God Palace actually came out of the South Pole Divine Tomb. What's going on? Did he obtain the inheritance of the South Pole Divine Tomb? My god, what's he going to do? Take revenge on the Dragon King or something? The strongest person from the throne of the Fire God Palace actually came out of the Divine Tomb. The divine tigers under him feel so terrifying. When Sui Yin disappeared, everyone around the Divine Tomb was discussing in shock. The strongest expert of the Fire God Palace had actually walked out of the Divine Tomb. Riding on the incomparably terrifying Divine Tiger, what opportunities had he obtained in the Divine Tomb? Had he also obtained the inheritance of the Eternal God Lord? Everyone in the surroundings was in an uproar. At the same time, this news quickly spread to the internet. Mingxin, I've created a divine kingdom for you during this period of time. Let me tell you, this divine kingdom is definitely much better than the divine kingdom of an ordinary god. You'll be able to become a god soon. At this moment, Qin Feiyang walked into an office in the Dragon Gate Academy with a smile on his face and said to Lu Mingxin, "Thank you, but there's no need. I've already gathered the materials needed to create a divine kingdom in the ancient lands." It's fine, it's fine. The materials you've collected are a little lacking. The divine kingdom I've helped you build is much better than the one you've built yourself. After all, a divine kingdom affects the strength of a god. Qin Feiyang licked his face as he leaned over and said with a smile. Lu Mingxin looked at him speechlessly. At the same time, she also felt that it was a little funny. The Qin Feiyang in front of her was the successor of an eternal God Lord. In the future, he had a 70% chance of stepping into the eternal God Lord realm. He was an invincible expert who could suppress an entire region. However, such an expert chased after her every day. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At the same time, she had a different feeling in her heart. Boom, boom. At this moment, the entire space suddenly trembled slightly. A terrifying pressure charged towards them. Lu Mingxin was slightly stunned. She immediately looked outside. Qin Feiyang also raised his eyebrows, his face filled with astonishment. Mingxin, don't be afraid. I'll protect you, he said with a laugh, then immediately flew out of the office with Lu Mingxin. The two flew out, and in the surroundings Xiaoran, Jilingfei and the others also flew out. At this moment, the two looked towards the south. What happened? Did Earth encounter another terrifying calamity? The expressions of everyone in River City changed slightly. The terrifying pressure caused their bodies to tremble. Everyone looked towards the south. Roar, roar. At this moment, a roar sounded from the south. Everyone looked over in shock. 5 divine tigers appeared in everyone's sight. That is Ran and the rest were slightly shocked. Their gazes were fixed on the 5 divine tigers and the figure on top of the divine tiger. I have returned from the divine tomb to take revenge. All the people of the Dragon King must die. At this moment, Yin slowly stood up on top of the divine light tiger and stepped on the tiger's head. Chapter 2018 2018 Yin vs. Flying Dust. I have returned from the tomb of the gods to take revenge. All the people of the Dragon King must die. When Yin's voice reverberated through the entire sky, everyone was slightly shocked. He stood on the head of the divine light tiger and stared coldly at Longmen Academy in front of him. When everyone in Jianghu City heard this voice, they were very surprised. Especially when the 5 divine tigers approached and saw Yin who was standing on the tiger's head, they all revealed astonished expressions. I returned from the god tomb? That's the strongest expert in the fire god palace. He actually didn't die. It's Yin. Back then he carried a divine weapon and desperately rushed into the South Pole god tomb. In the end the divine weapon exploded. I didn't expect that he actually didn't die. The 5 divine tigers beside him have such a terrifying aura. Hiss, could it be that he has obtained the God Lord's inheritance? That divine light tiger's aura is so terrifying. Heavens, he's here for revenge. He's here to seek revenge on the Dragon King. He wants to kill all of the Dragon King's people. When everyone heard that incomparably cold voice and looked at Yin who was standing on the tiger's head, they instantly recognized his identity. The strongest person in the throne room of the Fire God Palace. Returning from the divine tomb. Taking revenge on the Dragon King. When everyone saw this scene their expressions changed slightly. Ran, Ji Lingfei and the others stared intently at Yin, their expressions changing drastically. The strongest person in the throne room of the Fire God Palace had the strength of 4 wisps of divine fire in the past. Even if there was no increase in strength, it was still not something they could deal with. Oh no, that expert in the throne room of the Fire God Palace is very strong. Lu Mingxin's expression changed slightly when she saw this scene. You've returned from the divine tomb. Don't worry, Mingxin. With me here, even if he returns from hell, I can still send him back. Qin Feiyang narrowed his eyes slightly. His gaze swept over Yin as he said to Lu Mingxin. You. Lu Mingxin looked at Qin Feiyang. She opened her mouth slightly to thank him, but in the end she did not say it out loud. Qin Feiyang indeed had the strength to protect them. Disciple of the Dragon King, come out and face your death. Yin stood on the divine light tiger. His body was filled with killing intent as he looked at Ran, Ji Lingfei and Qin Feiyang in the sky. Face your death. If you want to take revenge on my master, you might be the one to face your death. When Ran heard his words he raised his head, stared at him and roared. Ha, looks like you are the Dragon King's disciple. Then die. I heard that this is the Dragon King's former residence. Today not only will I kill you, I will also wipe out the entire city. I want to let the Dragon King know that my revenge is not something he can endure. Yin's gaze locked onto Ran. A wild killing intent appeared on his face as he roared. Kill him. He ordered the 4 divine light tigers beside him. Roar, 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 roar. At this moment the 4 divine light tigers let out a furious roar. Their bodies emitted an icy cold aura as they pounced towards Ran. Yin did not hesitate at all. He immediately attacked when they met. One could imagine how much hatred and anger he had towards the Dragon King over the past year. TSK, TSK, TSK. You're from the divine tomb and I happen to be from the divine tomb as well. You dare to touch my brother-in-law? You're courting death. Qin Feiyang saw the 4 divine tigers of light attacking Ran. Naturally he could not hesitate at this moment. His body moved, and with a wave of his hand, 4 thick mountains that were thousands of meters in size appeared in front of him. Boom! With a wave of his arm, the 4 thick mountains smashed towards the 4 divine tigers of light. Roar, 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 roar. The 4 divine tigers saw the mountains and their faces revealed roaring expressions. The power of light on their bodies intensified and they opened up their huge tigers MW. One by one light bullets flew towards the mountains. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, a terrifying explosion sounded in the sky and the entire space shook. However, the mountain did not have the slightest ripple under the attacks of the 4 divine tigers of light. It continued to collide towards the divine tigers. Bang bang bang. A series of violent collisions caused the light on the bodies of the 4 divine lords of light to tremble violently. Their bodies flew backwards for over 10,000 meters. What? Who are you? When he saw the 4 divine tigers fly backwards, Sui Yin's pupils constricted slightly. His expression was grave as he stared at Qin Feiyang. Mountain God's main inheritor, Qin Feiyang, since you came out from the South Pole Divine Tomb, then let us have a competition. I want to see what you are capable of. Qin Feiyang's gaze swept past Sui Yin and the group of divine tigers of light, and a cold smile appeared on his face. This time he did not feel the slightest threat from Sui Yin. He was certain that the other party was absolutely not his opponent. This was the strong premonition of his mountain physique. The inheritor of the North Pole Divine Tomb. Sui Yin's expression changed slightly when he heard his words. Immediately after, a stern expression appeared on his face. I, Sui Yin, am the spokesperson of the Eternal God Lord. It is best for an inheritor like you not to participate in this. Otherwise you will die without even knowing how you died. Spokesperson, haha, interesting. Today I am participating in this. What can you do to me? I would like to know whether it is my Mountain God Lord's inheritance or your South Pole God Lord spokesperson who is more powerful. Qin Feiyang laughed out loud. His body trembled slightly and his body slowly grew bigger. Very soon, Qin Feiyang, who was as tall as a mountain, stood proudly in the void and stared coldly at Sui Yin. You are playing with fire and setting yourself on fire. Sui Yin felt the aura from Qin Feiyang's body and his expression changed slightly as he shouted out sternly. Let me see how powerful your South Pole God Tomb spokesperson is. Qin Feiyang revealed a savage expression on his face. His body moved, and like a meteorite he directly attacked towards Sui Yin. Divine Light Tiger, kill him. Sui Yin's pupils constricted, and he immediately ordered the 5 divine light tigers to attack Qin Feiyang. The 5 divine tigers, especially the one under him, directly pounced towards Qin Feiyang. In midair, its body grew to about 10,000 meters in size, and its huge mouth bit towards Qin Feiyang. Be careful. Lu Mingxin's expression changed slightly when she saw this scene, and she immediately shouted. Haha. Qin Feiyang heard her words and laughed loudly. He clenched his fist tightly and smashed it towards the divine light tiger. At the instant he attacked, an incomparably terrifying mountain formed in front of his fist and smashed towards the top of the divine tiger's head. Boom, boom, boom. Qin Feiyang, who had unleashed his full strength, had the strength to suppress the 7 wisps of divine fire god. When the mountain landed on the divine light tiger, the terrifying mountain power caused the divine light tiger's light power to dissipate. The divine light pearl in the middle of the tiger's head began to dim. Haha, with your strength you still want to kill the Dragon King for revenge? You have to have the strength of me at the very least. Qin Feiyang looked at the collapsing divine light tiger's arm and took out the divine light pearl with his mountain-like palm. While laughing he didn't forget to show off. Chapter 2019. 2019. In 2019, the God Lord had appeared, and Qin Feiyang had fallen. Boom. In the sky above Jianghu city, a tremor sounded and everyone raised their heads to look. Qin Feiyang, who was thousands of meters tall, gave off an invincible aura, and the 10,000-meter-tall divine light tiger was defeated with a single punch. The divine light pearl was held in his hand, and the divine light tiger instantly collapsed. At this moment he didn't need to say anything to show off, but he was indeed awesome. His invincible stance was extremely shocking. On Earth today many people already believed that Qin Feiyang had the strength that was comparable to the Dragon Palace. It was the strength of the entire Dragon Palace, not the strength of the Dragon King alone. In fact, in the eyes of many people, the Dragon King's strength wasn't very strong. In fact, he might not even have ignited the divine fire yet. Of course, this was only the opinion of the outside world. After all, Wuxia had never shown his strength. The last time when Qin Feiyang was subdued, due to the coverage of the space locusts in Shaolan's Kuan region, no one knew what exactly happened. In addition, Qin Feiyang often acted pretentious. This made many people come up with this view that was accepted by most people. What? The god of light tiger, which is comparable to the god of 6 wisps of divine fire, was actually defeated in an instant. When Sui Yin saw that the strongest god of light tiger was defeated by a single punch, a shocked expression appeared on his face. defeating the god of light, who was comparable to the god of 6 wisps of divine fire with a single punch. How could his strength be so terrifying? That god tiger is comparable to the god of 6 wisps of divine fire. My god, this Qin Feiyang's strength is so terrifying. Hiss, even though we have already witnessed the terror of Qin Feiyang's god, killing a divine tiger that is comparable to 6 wisps of divine fire with a single punch is still extremely shocking. That Sui Yin is completely incapable. Even if he entered the South Pole Divine Tomb, he still doesn't seem to be Qin Feiyang's match. It seems that he hasn't obtained the inheritance of the eternal god. Qin Feiyang is awesome. One after another, shocked discussions sounded from below. Everyone raised their heads and stared intently at this great battle. With your strength, you still dare to come and kill my brother-in-law and the others? Qin Feiyang saw the shocked Sui Yin and the corner of his mouth slightly curled up. He shouted somewhat shamelessly. When he heard these words, the faces of Xiao Ran, Lu Mingxin, and the others turned black. His gaze swept past the 4 god lords of light around him. His body shook and 6 mountains flew out from all directions. They directly pressed down on the last 4 god lords of light. Buzz buzz buzz. The 4 god tigers of light were trapped by the mountains, and were directly pressed down from all directions. Roar 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 roar. For sounds that seemed to be filled with terror rang out. Qin Feiyang extended his arm, and a huge palm directly put the god pearls of light into his bag. His gaze turned to Sui Yin, and his face was filled with a mocking expression. What a huge gap. The gap is too huge. Sui Yin had just walked out of the divine tomb, and now he's met Qin Feiyang. He's completely dumbfounded. I'm dying of laughter. I was still thinking of taking revenge on the Dragon King, but in the end I wanted to kill Xiao Ran and the others, but I was suppressed by Qin Feiyang. From below, everyone was watching this scene mockingly. Sui Yin, who had returned from the divine tomb, was still thinking of killing all the people of the Dragon King. In the end, he met Qin Feiyang, who was currently pursuing the Dragon King's disciple and sister-in-law. It was a tragedy in an instant. You dared to kill those divine tigers of light. You're finished. You're finished. When Sui Yin saw that all the divine lords of light were easily killed, a trace of fear appeared on his face. No matter what, he had never thought that this would be the case. He had obtained a huge opportunity from the divine tomb. Originally, he had wanted to suppress the Dragon King, but in the end, he realized that the Dragon King's strength might not be something he could deal with. He wanted to make a move on the Dragon King's family. However, on this side he had encountered a tough nut to crack. He was a little frightened and wanted to vomit blood. This time, he had brought the 5 divine tigers of light that the Divine Lord had given him. TSK, the one who is finished is you. You can go and die too. Sui Yin's figure moved and directly attacked Sui Yin. A 5-fingered mountain pressed down towards him. Not good. Escape. Seeing the 5-fingered mountain, his expression changed drastically. He hurriedly turned around and wanted to flee into the distance. You want to escape from my 5-finger mountain? Qin Feiyang said disdainfully. The 5-finger mountain pressed down on him. No. If you dare to kill me, the God Lord will not let you off. God Lord Guangyi will make you wish you were dead. Sui Yin felt the threat of death coming from the 5-finger mountain in the sky. He shouted in fear. God Lord Guangyi? Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned when he heard this name. The 5-finger mountain in the sky froze slightly. God Lord Lightwing, TSK, I want to see how a God Lord who has been dead for hundreds of thousands of years won't let me off, haha. However, soon, a faint smile appeared on his face. According to the inheritance, he knew that God Lord Lightwing was an existence comparable to the Mountain God Lord. However, in the inheritance, God Lord Lightwing had died even earlier than the Mountain God Lord. Die. With a light shout, the terrifying mountain landed on Sui Yin's body. Wong. At this moment, a light spot on his chest suddenly shone brightly. The light spot covered his entire body and blocked the mountain's attack. It seems that you still obtain some treasures in the divine tomb. Qin Feiyang said indifferently as he raised his other hand and pressed downwards once more. Boom! A powerful shockwave crashed against the light barrier on his body. At this moment, Sui Yin's expression changed drastically as he spat out large mouthfuls of blood. The current him was only able to ignite 5 wisps of divine fire. He was not Qin Feiyang's match at all. In fact, he did not even have the strength to resist. Pooh. Sensing that the light barrier was about to collapse, Suiyan's face turned pale and malevolent. Qin Feiyang, just you wait. Very soon the Lord God will kill you. Very soon, just you wait. A shrill voice came from Suiyan's mouth. Under the protection of the remaining light barrier, a drop of his divine blood directly fled in the direction of the South Pole God tomb. Ah! Qin Feiyang slightly raised his eyebrows when he saw that the divine blood had escaped. With a wave of his arm, a mountain appeared out of thin air in front of the divine blood. Bang! However, the power of light directly pierced through the mountain, carrying his divine blood and continuing to rush towards the south. You can escape the first day of the Lunar New Year, but you can't escape the 15th day. Wait until my strength increases a little more, and I'll directly overturn your South Pole divine tomb. Qin Feiyang saw that a drop of Suiyan's divine blood had completely escaped, so he didn't pay too much attention to it. He spoke with confidence. So God Suiyan is finished just like that. It's simply too tragic. Last time I was suppressed by the Dragon King's subordinates. This time I originally obtained a huge opportunity. After returning from the divine tomb and meeting God Qin Feiyang, I was once again suppressed. I only managed to escape a drop of divine blood. This fellow can be called the most unlucky person to have such an opportunity. Everyone in Jianghu City laughed and discussed when they saw that Suiyan was on the verge of death. Unlucky fellow. Chapter 2020. 2020 God Lord came out, Qin Feiyang fell too. That's right, I got 5 God Pearls of Light. These God Pearls of Light can be compared to divine artifacts. To light attribute cultivators, they are incomparably huge treasures. In the sky above Jianghu City's Dragon Gate Academy, Qin Feiyang looked at the 5 God Pearls of Light in his hand, and a smile appeared on his face. Mingxin, come. With these God Pearls of Light, you can use them to build your divine kingdom, and even nurture them into divine artifacts. They can double your strength. As he spoke, he walked to Lu Mingxin's side with a smile and handed over a few divine pearls of light. Pay attention to your words in the future. Lu Mingxin was very dissatisfied with Qin Feiyang's way of addressing her brother. She snorted coldly. Hee. Qin Feiyang smiled and did not say anything. Xiao Ran, who was at the side, saw this scene. He smiled faintly and did not ask any more questions. If he had a lot of opinions about Qin Feiyang in the beginning, he no longer had any opinions about Qin Feiyang now. The God Lord that Suiyan mentioned won't really exist, right? Now that a god has resurrected, will a God Lord also resurrect? At this moment, Ji Lingfei, who was by the side, said with a slight frown. No. According to the inheritance I obtained, the battle between God Lords is even more intense than that of ordinary gods. More than 10 God Lords have all fallen. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, not caring at all. At most, some people had obtained the inheritance of the South Pole God tomb. However, even if someone had really obtained the inheritance of the South Pole God Lord, he was not afraid at all. Back then, the mountain God Lord's strength was among the top among the God Lords. Even if there really was a God Lord's inheritor, he was not afraid at all. That's good. Ji Lingfei and the others nodded slightly and looked in the direction of the South Pole divine tomb. Give me some time. When the time comes, I'll break open that divine tomb with my powerful strength. Qin Feiyang also looked towards the south with a proud expression. Damn it. However, at this moment in the sky above the South Pole divine tomb, a drop of divine blood drew a bright trail under the protection of the light shield and quickly rushed towards the divine tomb. In the center of the light shield, a human figure formed by a drop of blood roared with a ferocious expression. I want the Lord God to kill you all. I want to kill all of you. Not a single one of you will be left alive. The Lord God's successor? You are just a successor. You are courting death. The divine blood was trembling violently, filled with thick blood and resentment. Buzz. He rushed into the divine tomb and immediately flew towards the center of the eternal divine kingdom. On the divine mountain at the center of the mountain, God Lord Guangyi stood there and stared at Suiyan, who was flying towards him. When the divine tigers of light were killed, he had already sensed something. When he saw that Suiyan was only left with a drop of divine blood, God Lord Guangyi's expression did not change at all. Lord God Lord, you must avenge this lowly one. Suiyan flew over and shouted with a shrill voice. What happened? 6 light god lords were killed. Who did you offend? God Lord Lightwing stared coldly at Sui Yin's divine blood and asked. Lord God Lord, it was the inheritor of the North Pole divine tomb. It was him. I wanted to take revenge on the Dragon King, but I met the inheritor of the North Pole divine tomb. All 5 light god lords were killed by him. I only have 1 drop of divine blood left, and I escaped with the protection you gave me. Lord God, you have to avenge me. Sui Yin floated there and shouted miserably. The inheritor of the North Pole divine tomb? The inheritor of the mountain god lord? That mountain guy's mountain body is very terrifying. He is just an inheritor. Is there any more news? God Lord Lightwing raised his head slightly, but his face didn't change at all. Lord God Lord, currently, there are only 3 forces in the entire planet. The Dragon Palace, the Dragon Gate Academy, and the inheritor of the North Pole God Tomb. The leader of the Dragon Palace, the Dragon King, is the culprit who killed our senior and junior brothers. Sui Yin immediately reported. The God Lord of Light Wings didn't say anything but slowly walked forward. Lord God Lord, you want to go? Sui Yin saw the God Lord of Light Wings walk toward the exit of the Divine Kingdom, and he was stunned. Open the Eternal Divine Kingdom. The God Lord of Light Wings said and looked in Sui Yin's direction. Bus. A ball of light enveloped Sui Yin's divine blood and condensed a light void body for him. Take me to the mountain God Lord's successor. The God Lord of Light Wings ordered Sui Yin. It's the God Lord. Sui Yin's eyes flashed with excitement and he immediately pointed in the direction. Wang. The God Lord of Light Wings did not rush over immediately. He came to the exit of the Divine Kingdom and a vast wave of light power spread out in all directions. Roar. At this moment, in the entire Eternal Divine Kingdom, 20 to 30 divine tigers of light that were formed from light energy spread out in all directions. They raised their heads and roared. Ka 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 ka. This roar seemed to have turned on a switch. Rays of light shot out in all directions. A gentle amount of light energy spread out in all directions, quickly covering an area of over 10,000 kilometers. What's happening now? Hiss, what's going on? What's going on in this divine tomb? I just received news that God Qin Feiyang killed the Sui Yin god who came out of this divine tomb. Everyone's expressions changed greatly as they stared intently at the radiant divine kingdom, their faces filled with shock. The eternal divine kingdom is opening. Roar roar. At this moment, a voice filled with boundless majesty came from within the divine tomb. This voice caused everyone to be slightly shocked. Roar. At this moment, everyone saw an incomparably huge divine tiger with radiant wings flying out from the entrance of the divine kingdom. Its body was several thousand meters in size, and it was different from the divine tiger that was formed from the light attribute floating around the divine tomb. This divine tiger emitted a powerful life force and pressure. Voila! The light-winged divine tiger's eyes indifferently swept across everyone around the eternal kingdom, and its 1,000-meter-large wings spread out. Around the wings, light wings floated around. Wang. Above his head, an incomparably huge divine crown of light slowly appeared. Voila! His wings trembled slightly, and he flew out of the divine kingdom, flying towards the east. God Lord Lightwing didn't say a single word. Only an endless pressure spread out in all directions. Everyone around the divine tomb held their breaths as they watched this scene. Their mouths were slightly agape and their expressions were filled with shock. This God Lord, who had once again emerged from the divine tomb, was even more terrifying than Sui Yin and the others not long ago. What's the situation with that divine light tiger? Its aura is so terrifying. Is it a creature that revived in the divine tomb? Where is it going? When the radiant God Lord disappeared, some people muttered. At this time, some people looked into the divine tomb and thought of what they had just said. The eternal divine kingdom was opened. Chapter 2021. 2021 God Lord came out, and dust flew everywhere. The eternal kingdom opened? This is not the God Lord's tomb. After the God Lord died, he was called the God Tomb. Why does it say that the eternal kingdom opened? Some people standing around the God Kingdom murmured, looking at the eternal kingdom with interest. The eternal kingdom seems to be able to enter. Some people looked at the stairs at the entrance with interest. Come, let's go in and take a look. A young man gritted his teeth and walked towards the stairs. In an instant, everyone looked at the young men. The young man at the front mustered up his courage and slowly walked up the stairs. When he reached the stairs, his heart was beating violently. When he saw that the destructive light energy was gone, his face revealed a look of joy. I'm fine, I'm fine. His face was filled with joy as he continued to walk up the stairs. Behind him, a group of youths immediately followed closely behind. We can go into the God tomb. Quick, we can go too. The tomb of the eternal God Lord, there are treasures everywhere. At this moment, everyone went crazy. They immediately rushed into the God nation. Lowly creatures, the light-wing God Lord opening the divine kingdom is a gift to all of you. You must move forward humbly. Just as everyone crossed the last step, a voice suddenly sounded in everyone's mind. Everyone was slightly stunned as they looked forward. In front of them there was an incomparably huge divine statue. The divine statue was a divine tiger with wings. The divine tiger was incomparably majestic, giving everyone an unfathomable pressure. In front of this God statue, everyone couldn't help but bend down. Hiss, how can there be such a powerful pressure? Why does this divine tomb feel completely different from the Arctic divine tomb? Everyone was slightly shocked. They looked at each other and continued to walk inside. When they entered, their expression started to change. Everything was too normal. There wasn't the slightest sense of dilapidation or killing intent. Some people had entered the North Pole divine tomb, and it was filled with sorrow. Some things were already dilapidated, giving people a sense of silence. And here, everything was full of vitality. It was as if it was not a graveyard, but a true divine kingdom. Right, did you notice that the divine tiger that just flew out is almost identical to the statue of God Lord Guangyi at the entrance? Suddenly a girl said. Some of the people around were slightly shocked. As they recalled, their expressions started to change. You mean the owner of this divine tomb isn't dead? One of them asked in surprise. No, he should have fallen, but is it possible that he has been resurrected? Is it possible that the God Lord has been resurrected? Everyone's hearts trembled slightly. They looked around the divine kingdom. How was this a divine tomb? It was clearly the divine kingdom of an eternal God Lord. Boom! Just as everyone who entered the divine kingdom was shocked, a ray of light suddenly enveloped the entire Jianghu city. In the center of the light, a divine tiger that was thousands of meters in size stood in the center. At the same time, a majestic pressure instantly covered the entire land. Suddenly, a light covered the entire sky, causing everyone to be slightly shocked. What happened again? The people of Jianghu City were slightly stunned. It had only been less than an hour since the incident with Sui Yin. What had happened now? Light? Within Longmen Academy, Xiao Ran and the others sensed the sudden appearance of the light pressure. A bad premonition suddenly appeared in their hearts. Their bodies moved and they immediately flew into the sky. Someone is coming from the South Pole Divine Tomb again. Qin Feiyang's slightly impatient voice sounded in the void. He stood beside Lu Mingxin and slightly looked towards the sky. When he saw the God Lord of Light Wings in the middle of the void, he was slightly stunned. Lord God Lord, it's him. It's him who nearly killed me. It's him, the successor of the North Pole Divine Tomb's God Lord. An incomparably furious voice sounded in the air. The voice was not loud, but everyone could hear it clearly. Sir God Master. Xiao Ran, Ji Lingfei, and the others looked at Sui Yin's divine blood. Their gazes then landed on God Master Guangyi. God Master? Qin Feiyang was also slightly startled. His eyes sized up God Master Guangyi from head to toe. He slowly became serious. What's going on? Is that huge divine light tiger from the South Pole God Tomb? Are they here to take revenge for Sui Yin? In Jianghu City, all the people raised their heads, their expressions changing. Shan Yu's inheritor? At this moment, God Lord Lightwing, who was in the sky, locked his gaze on Qin Feiyang and asked indifferently. That mountain guy. When Qin Feiyang heard God Lord Lightwing's words, his pupils constricted. He dared to directly address God Lord Mountain by his name, and even attached that guy to it. Only existences of the same level would address him in this way. Otherwise, even for a fallen God Lord, very few people would address him in this way. It wasn't just Qin Feiyang. When everyone heard God Lord Lightwing's awe-inspiring and disdainful address, they were all slightly shocked. They stared at God Lord Lightwing, their expressions constantly changing. Who are you? Please speak with more respect. Qin Feiyang's expression was somewhat awkward as he roared in a low voice. Haha, even if he is still alive, I, Lightwing, dare to address him directly. Godlord Lightwing laughed lightly as he stared at Qin Feiyang. An inheritor dares to kill my disciple. His crime is unforgivable. Godlord Lightwing indifferently said as he slightly raised his head. Roar. In an instant, a tiger head formed from light shot towards Qin Feiyang. What? At this moment, when Qin Feiyang heard Godlord Lightwing's words and felt this attack, his expression changed drastically. Godlord Lightwing, how is this possible? Didn't you already die? This is impossible. Mountains carry rivers. Qin Feiyang's pupils constricted as he shouted in disbelief. At the same time, his entire body trembled. A 10,000-meter thick mountain appeared in front of him, directly facing the tiger's head. There are many things you don't know. The mountain body that has just been formed is not able to withstand a single blow. Godlord Lightwing indifferently said to him. Boom. At this moment, the tiger's head collided with the mountain. The incomparably huge tiger's head emitted incomparably sharp teeth as it bit down on the mountain. Ka ka ka. At this moment, the mountain slowly split apart. Roar. The tiger's head roared angrily. Streams of light completely destroyed the mountain and directly attacked Qin Feiyang. What? Qin Feiyang's expression changed slightly. With a wave of his arm, his entire body rapidly expanded. With the mountain body activated, the 10,000-meter giant body appeared in front of everyone. Break for me. He let out a loud roar and attacked the streams of light. Chapter 2022. 2022 God Lord, dust flying, fall 4. Boom. The entire sky began to shake and countless streams of light shot out in all directions. Boom boom boom. An enormous explosion rang out. Xiao Ran, Ji Lingfei, Lu Mingxin, and the others' expressions changed slightly, and they hurriedly blocked the streams of light. Boom. Xiao Ran waved his arm, and an incomparably large flame shield blocked the sky. However, the flame shield was instantly pierced through, and a few rays of light shot towards him. Bang! When the rays of light landed in front of him, Xiao Ran's expression changed drastically, and he flew backwards. Oh no, what a terrifying attack! His face was filled with shock, and Ji Lingfei's expression was also incomparably grave. Ah! At this moment, the people below who had been swept by the flowing light let out miserable cries. Under that flowing light, even demigods were instantly reduced to ashes. In an instant, that flowing light alone had caused the deaths of at least 10,000 people in River City. Damn it! Qin Feiyang saw this scene, and an angry expression appeared on his face. He clenched his hand tightly, and a mountain peak appeared in front of him, slamming heavily in front of him. The mountain directly smashed towards the tiger's head. At the same time, he immediately flew into the sky to prevent the city below from being affected. Roar! Roar! The tiger's head roared and directly smashed towards the mountain. The incomparably terrifying power caused the mountain to collapse once again. Be careful. When Lu Mingxin saw this scene, her expression changed greatly, and she immediately warned loudly. All this while, Qin Feiyang had only relied on his mountain to suppress powerful enemies. This was the first time he had seen his mountain being shattered so easily. I am the Mountain God Lord's successor. Even if you are the Lightwing God Lord, you have already fallen. Even if you are resurrected now, it is impossible for you to have peak strength. I, Qin Feiyang, am not afraid of you. Qin Feiyang roared loudly as his body was covered by pieces of rocks. Soon, a mountain giant appeared in the void and transformed into a mountain. This was Qin Feiyang's strongest attack. After he finished speaking, he directly attacked the radiant wing god lord. The terrifying power and heavy aura were like an incomparably huge star that crashed towards him. Roar roar. The god lord of light wings continued to stare at Qin Feiyang indifferently as the massive tiger head charged towards him once more. Get lost. Qin Feiyang transformed into a mountain and charged towards the tiger head. A terrifying sonic boom sounded in the sky. Hong. The heavy attack caused everyone's hearts to tremble, as if their hearts had stopped beating. A few 100,000 meters below, some people below the demigod level spat out a mouthful of blood. In the sky, a wave of air that could be seen with the naked eye shot out in all directions. Everyone in Jianghu City, as well as the cities around Jianghu City, had a huge change in expression. They were all filled with fear. God Lord? God Lord Guangyi, how is this possible? That divine tiger is actually the eternal God Lord. Hiss, the eternal God Lord has been resurrected? Oh my God, this. Below, everyone was sprawled on the ground, their faces filled with shock. Some of them were trembling as they shouted loudly. The resurrection of the eternal God Lord was like an invincible boss to everyone. Who would be able to block the resurrection of such an existence? Everyone raised their heads and looked at Qin Feiyang, who was fighting against God Lord Lightwing in the sky. The 10,000-meter-long tiger head was now completely biting Qin Feiyang's left hand. His mountain-like right hand kept smashing toward the tiger head. Roar. Crack. Ah. At this moment, a miserable scream came from Qin Feiyang's mouth. His mountain-like left arm began to slowly crack. It was crushed by the tiger's mouth. Qin Feiyang. Lu Mingxin's body trembled, and her eyes turned red as she roared. Explode. Qin Feiyang roared, and his entire left arm started to explode. A powerful force rushed towards the tiger's head. Roar. The tiger's head started to tremble, and the power of light flickered. Mountain body HMP. The God Lord of Light Wings frowned slightly when he saw this. He then snorted, and his wings trembled slightly. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, two enormous wings of light shot out from his body and slashed towards Qin Feiyang. The two wings of light were like lasers. In a flash, they landed on Qin Feiyang's body. Bang, bang, bang. Qin Feiyang's body instantly began to crumble, and large chunks of stone began to scatter in all directions. Ah! A pained cry came from his mouth, and a hint of terror appeared on Qin Feiyang's face. Space locust, come out. He let out a terrified roar, and countless space locusts flew out from his body. At least 3 to 4 billion space locusts were densely packed towards God Lord Lightwing. Troublesome. God Lord Lightwing saw the space locusts appear, and the divine crown on his head emitted a ray of light as it swept towards the billions of space locusts. GGG. In an instant, the space locusts let out miserable cries. Countless space locust corpses fell towards the ground below. Over 100 million locusts fell, but the dozens of space locusts only lasted for a few dozen seconds. Following that, two incomparably sharp wings slashed towards Qin Feiyang's body once more. No! Seeing all the space locusts being destroyed and the extremely sharp wings landing on his body, Qin Feiyang's face revealed a terrified and desperate roar. Bang, bang, bang. A few terrifying collisions sounded. Qin Feiyang slowly lowered his head and looked at his body in shock. His mountain body was gradually falling apart. He could feel that his life force was rapidly disappearing. No, I haven't returned to the boundless star field. I'm the inheritor of the eternal God Lord. He shouted indignantly, his voice spreading throughout the entire world. Qin Feiyang. Lu Mingxin's eyes instantly turned red as she shouted in disbelief. A mere inheritor of the God Lord dares to challenge the dignity of my light wings? He's courting death. At this moment, a cold voice filled with might sounded from above. Hong. With a loud sound, huge rocks fell down one after another. There was some blood mixed within the rocks. At this moment, everyone looked at this scene in a daze. Qin Feiyang was dead. Qin Feiyang was actually killed. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, their faces filled with shock. Qin Feiyang's strength was something everyone had witnessed. Just a few billion starry locusts were enough to wipe out all the gods. But now he was easily killed. No. When Lu Mingxin saw Qin Feiyang's corpse, her expression changed greatly, and she couldn't help but shout loudly. I'm God Lord Guangyi. Now that the eternal kingdom has been opened, everyone should go and worship me. All the gods on this planet will enter my eternal kingdom and become disciples within 3 days. Otherwise the gods will perish. At this moment, a majestic voice enveloped the entire earth and entered everyone's ears. Chapter 2023. 2023. All living beings become servants and all gods become disciples. I am God Lord Lightwing. The eternal divine kingdom is now open. Everyone go and worship. All the gods on this planet, enter my eternal divine kingdom and become disciples within 3 days. Otherwise the gods will perish. A vast and majestic voice resounded across the sky. The voice reverberated throughout the entire sky. Everyone listened to this sentence in a daze. Their faces were filled with shock. Especially those who were far away from Jianghu city. When they heard this voice, their eyes were a little dazed and their mouths were slightly agape. Light-wing God Lord? God Lord? Why did a God Lord suddenly appear on our earth? Hiss. The eternal divine kingdom has opened up. Is it the eternal divine kingdom from the South Pole divine tomb? Allowing the gods to join the eternal divine kingdom and become disciples, that light-wing God Lord sure has an overbearing way of doing things. The sky is going to change again. A shocking voice rang out, and everyone looked at the South Pole graveyard in a daze. Wong. At this moment, the wailing of heaven and earth rang out, and the shadow of a mountain giant suddenly appeared in the void. The shadow appeared for less than 10 seconds before it began to slowly collapse. The mountain god lord's successor, Qin Feiyang, had fallen. Hearing the mournful cries of heaven and earth and seeing the collapsing phantom, countless people were shocked. Qin Feiyang was the biggest lucky person before the recovery of spiritual energy, especially the position of Jianghu city. Today it was a huge disaster for Jianghu city. The light-wing god's main inheritor had fallen. Not long ago, Qin Feiyang, who had still displayed his divine might, had crushed Sui Yin and the 5 light god tigers who had returned from the god's tomb. But now he had been killed so easily. Everyone had witnessed Qin Feiyang's strength. He was definitely an invincible expert. But he had been killed so easily by God Lord Guangyi. How powerful could God Lord Guangyi be? In the sky above Jianghu city, God Lord Guangyi indifferently swept his gaze over the corpses on the ground. His face was filled with contempt. He waved his arm, and all the corpses of the space locusts and Qin Feiyang were directly collected. The Lord God is invincible. Beside the God Lord, Sui Yin, who was in the light void form, shouted with excitement. Next it was the Dragon King's turn. Buzz. The God Lord glanced around and the light disappeared instantly. Next he just had to wait for the gods to join the eternal divine kingdom. As for whether there were any gods who did not join, he was not worried at all. Those who did not join, he could just kill them. He believed that killing a God Lord's successor was enough to intimidate everyone. Roar roar. God Lord Lightwing, who had teleported to the sky above the eternal divine kingdom in the South Pole, let out a soft roar. He emitted a powerful divine might and flew directly into the divine kingdom. God Lord Lightwing is here, God Lord Lightwing is here. When he entered the divine kingdom, the faces of the people who had entered the divine kingdom changed slightly, and they hurriedly shouted. They had also heard the voice just now. Everyone respectfully knelt on the ground and bowed to God Lord Lightwing. Facing such a terrifying existence, they didn't dare not to kneel. God Lord Lightwing glanced indifferently and crouched above the peak of the divine kingdom. Who would have thought that the God Lord in this divine tomb would be resurrected? Everyone worships him and the gods are his disciples. Will the Dragon King come here? Let's wait here. God Lord Guangyi is simply too terrifying. Qin Feiyang is the God Lord's successor, yet he was killed so easily. The people who entered the eternal divine kingdom saw God Lord Guangyi enter the center of the divine kingdom, and all of them were discussing in fear. Qin Feiyang. However, at this moment in front of Jianghu City's Dragon Gate Academy, Lu Mingxin's eyes were bloodshot as she looked at her surroundings. The corpse had already been taken away by God Lord Guangyi, so she could only look forward with sadness. This made her think of all the things Qin Feiyang had done to her during this period of time. The gifts he had given her, the teasing words he had said to her every day. Brother Qin Feiyang, he's dead. Lu Mingxin could not help but come to Xiao Ran's side and burst into tears. Don't cry, don't cry. Let's go to Master's place. Don't cry. Xiao Ran also patted his sister's shoulder with some sadness. No matter what, Qin Feiyang gave everyone a pretty good impression, even if they had some grudges in the beginning. However, Qin Feiyang had made a move to deal with the danger that Earth had encountered, and when Sui Yin came over to take revenge, Qin Feiyang had helped him. Sui Yin's usual attitude, although he liked to act pretentious, was not annoying. He spoke softly, and his eyes were filled with fear as he looked in the direction of the South Pole. Who would want an eternal God there, a resurrected eternal God? Moreover, the eternal God had asked all the gods on earth to join his eternal divine kingdom and become his disciples. How overbearing was it to become his disciple? Even when the Dragon King had asked the gods to join the Dragon Palace as external members, he was not this overbearing. Perhaps, this was the majesty and confidence of the Eternal Lord. Let's go to the Dragon Palace. Xiao Ran patted Lu Mingxin's shoulder and the group immediately flew towards the Dragon Palace. The current situation was not something he could solve. But, Master. Teacher. When Xiao Ran and the rest arrived in the sky above the Dragon Palace, they saw Wang Xian and the leaders of the Dragon Palace floating in the sky. Yes. Wang Xian nodded and looked towards the South Pole with a slight frown. Master Qin Feiyang is dead. Xiao Ran walked over and said in a low voice. I already know that the god of light wings is very powerful. Wang Xian nodded his head. He had sensed it when Qin Feiyang died. Qin Feiyang's death surprised him greatly. Qin Feiyang's strength had already ignited 7 wisps of divine fire and possessed a special physique. Before Wang Xian's level increased, he could not guarantee that he would be a match for him. Master, that god of light wings used less than a minute to kill Qin Feiyang. His strength might not have recovered to the level of the eternal God Lord, but he should be close to the peak in the God realm. He wants all the gods to worship him. He wants all the gods to become his disciple. He wants all the living beings to be his servants and all the gods to be his disciples. He is the master. Xiao Ran continued to speak to Wang Xian with an embarrassed expression. That eternal God is too strong. I'm not his match. Ao, he said with a solemn expression. Xiaolan can now kill a god with 8 wisps of divine fire. Judging from the power of the god of light wings, he should be above the 8 wisps of divine fire. Lan Qingyue frowned at the side. Xiao Xian, should we enter the Transcendence continent to hide? Guan Shuqing and the other girls looked worried. With the current strength of the Dragon Palace, it would be difficult for them to fight against the God Lord of Lightwing. Ao he, if you devour the tomb in the North Pole, do you have the confidence to kill the God Lord of Lightwing? At this moment, Prime Minister Gue suddenly asked Ao he. Devour the damaged eternal divine kingdom? Ao Crab's eyes were shining. If I devour that divine kingdom, I have the confidence to defeat or even kill him. Prime Minister Gue nodded slightly and looked at Wang Xian. Ba Qi, go and pick a soul-returning embryo fruit. Xiao Ran, bring Ba Qi to the place where Qin Feiyang died. Revive him. We will enter the divine kingdom at the North Pole and let Ao Crab devour the divine tomb. Wang Xian ordered the 8-limbed Xiao Ran and the rest indifferently. If it was a true eternal god, the Dragon Palace would naturally not be their match. However, a god who had fallen and resurrected had yet to recover to his peak. He wanted to see what qualifications he had to make them his disciples. All living beings as servants and gods as disciples. Hehe. Chapter 2024. 2024 gathered. Uncle Ba Qi, can the Dragon Palace really save Qin Feiyang? Really? At this moment, in the void, Xiao Ran, Ji Lingfei, and Lu Mingxin flew toward the place where Qin Feiyang had fallen with Ba Qi. When Lu Mingxin heard the news that Qin Feiyang could be saved, she was excited. Kakik, there's nothing our Dragon Palace can't do. The last time Xiao Ran died, he was directly saved. Ba Qi smiled arrogantly and said indifferently. Last time my brother's corpse was still okay. But this time Qin Feiyang's? His body was taken away by the God Lord of Light Wings. Lu Mingxin's eyes flickered as she said this. Don't worry. You'll know soon enough. As Ba Qi spoke, the group sped up and flew towards River City. When they arrived at River City, everyone turned their gazes towards Ba Qi. Ba Qi took out the soul-returning cauldron and crushed it. A special sensation entered his heart. With a slight jolt, the crushed soul-returning cauldron condensed once more, forming the image of Qin Feiyang. However, it looked like it was only the size of a palm. It closed its eyes and did not move. Qin Feiyang's death this time was different from Xiao Ran's. At the very least, Xiao Ran still had a corpse. He did not even have a corpse. The soul-returning embryo condensed into a body. Ba Qi smiled. Let's go back to the Dragon Palace. Under the shocked gazes of Lu Mingxin, Xiao Ran, and the rest, everyone immediately flew toward the Dragon Palace. Dragon King. After entering the Dragon Palace, Ba Qi handed the soul-returning embryo fruit to Wang Xian. He still needs some energy to revive. Okay. Wang Xian nodded. After hesitating for a moment, he looked at Lan Qingyue. Qingyue, he has the energy of Kun in his body. Let Xiaolan release some energy to revive him, he said to Lan Qingyue. Originally, Qin Feiyang already had some of Little Blue's systems in his body. These systems could not strengthen him in any way. Instead, they could control his life and death. This time, if he used Kun's energy to completely revive him, it would also be an opportunity for him. In the long run, this opportunity would be even more terrifying than the Mountain God Lord's opportunity. This could also be considered a compensation for swallowing his divine kingdom. All right. Lan Qingyue nodded. With a wave of her arm, a special gray energy entered Qin Feiyang's body. Soon, Qin Feiyang's body slowly grew bigger, and he finally returned to his original appearance. However, the energy in his body was only at the demigod level. And at this moment, Qin Feiyang's body moved, and Lu Mingxin, who was beside him, revealed a look of surprise and joy. He's alive. He's really alive, she said with a pleasantly surprised expression. Oh, I'm dead, right? This. Qin Feiyang slowly opened his eyes and looked around. Then he suddenly touched his own body. What's wrong with me? Why am I so weak? What happened? He said anxiously. You're already dead. Your body was taken away by the God Lord of Lightwing. Our Dragon King resurrected you. Kiki. Oktaki smiled at him and said, I'm dead. I remember. Mingxin, I really died and was resurrected? He still looked at Lu Mingxin in disbelief and asked. Yes, it was teacher who brought you back to life. Because your body was taken away by the God Lord of Lightwing, he created a new body for you. Lu Mingxin started to explain to him. This caused Qin Feiyang's expression to change continuously. Not long ago, he had the strength of 7 wisps of divine fire. Now he was only at the demigod level. This blow was very, very big to him. Let's go. Bring us into the god tomb of the god of mountain. We need that god tomb of yours. At this moment, Wang Xian said directly to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang, after the god of light wings killed you, he opened up the eternal god. He wanted all the living beings to worship him. He also wanted all the gods to enter his divine kingdom as his disciples. Teacher and the rest want to use the divine kingdom of the mountain god to increase their strength. Lu Mingxin immediately explained to him. He wants to use my eternal divine kingdom. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. His expression changed and he looked like he was in pain. All right, it's already a new life for you to be revived by us. Furthermore, your body and physical energy are gathered by me. You can die completely with just a thought. Lan Qingyue said to him indifferently. The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. He nodded his head and accepted his fate. All right. No matter what, thank you for saving my life, Dragon King. He stood up and bowed slightly to Wang Xian. He knew that being able to resurrect from the dead was already the greatest opportunity for him. Let's go. Wang Xian gestured to Ao Crab and the rest. They immediately flew into the North Pole Divine Tomb. Even though the Divine Tomb was damaged, it still contained a terrifying pressure. If one wanted to enter the North Pole Divine Tomb with brute force, one had to have the strength of a peak godly state. This was also the reason why Wang Xian and the rest did not enter the 2 tombs at the North and South Poles. But, as the inheritor of the tomb, Qin Feiyang could freely enter the tomb. Under his lead, the group entered the tomb. I was originally planning to wait until I reached the level of the Eternal God Lord before making it my eternal divine kingdom. Now. Qin Feiyang looked around the tomb with a helpless expression. Ao Crab. Wang Xian gestured to Ao Crab who was beside him. All right, Dragon King, the divine kingdom of the eternal divine Lord, even if it's a slightly broken divine kingdom. Ao Crab's face revealed a fiery expression. Roar. He growled in a low voice and his entire body underwent an earth-shattering transformation. He was a gigantic and ferocious devouring dragon with a pitch-black body. There were sharp claws and spikes made of bone. It had a pair of enormous wings made of bone, and its entire body was exuding an evil aura. Its entire body was more than 10,000 meters in size. Walala. At this moment, small devouring dragons of the same shape crawled out of his body. The densely packed small devouring dragons revealed each of them to be 3 to 4 meters in size, and their faces were ferocious and terrifying. While Qin Feiyang was dumbstruck, Ao Crab directly swallowed some of the buildings in the divine tomb. Crack. Crack, crack. A mountain peak that was thousands of meters in size was directly swallowed by Ao crab. Following that, Ao crab's huge and savage body began to devour the surrounding mountains. As a mountain peak in the divine kingdom of an eternal god, every one of them could be called a divine peak. After Ao crab devoured it, it immediately turned into majestic energy. As long as the devouring dragon had enough resources, it could evolve to the peak. Mengxin, my heart is bleeding. Chen Feiyang looked at the eternal divine kingdom that originally belonged to him being devoured and said to Lu Mengxin with heartache. All right. It's good that you're alive. Although the divine kingdom was lost, the inheritance is still there. You can still recover in the future. Lu Mengxin said to him with a smile. Chapter 2025. 2025 and 2025, all the living beings gathered. Ao crab's devouring speed was very fast. His 10,000-meter-long body was wreaking havoc in the divine tomb, and the mountain peaks were decreasing at a terrifying speed. At the same time, the aura on his body was even more terrifying. It's completely over. The eternal divine kingdom. Back then, the mountain god lord used nearly 10,000 years to build an eternal divine kingdom. Chen Feiyang looked at her unwillingly. He wanted to cry but no tears came out. I'm going to ignite the divine fire. I'll protect you from now on. Lu Mengxin smiled when she saw him like this. You said it yourself. I'll rely on you from now on. Chen Feiyang immediately stared at her and said, Why do I feel like you're up to no good? Lu Mengxin saw the change in his expression and raised her eyebrows as she stared at him warily. How can that be? Mengxin, my eternal divine kingdom is gone. He quickly pulled a long face and looked pitiful. At this moment he also knew that he had to cling tightly to Lu Mengxin. The Dragon King's influence had completely exceeded his expectations, especially the monster that had devoured his divine kingdom. It was simply terrifying. Even when he was at his peak, he was absolutely not a match for this monster. In the future we'll cultivate together. I believe that one day, we'll definitely become the eternal God Lord. Lu Mengxin smiled at him and comforted him. Then in the future we'll walk the path of cultivation side by side. Chen Feiyang's eyes flickered as he said. Kit, don't have any bad ideas. I wasn't your match in the past, but now, Itchimpich, you have to be more honest. Xiao Ran, who was at the side, glanced at him when he saw this fellow's expression. Chen Feiyang smiled embarrassedly and didn't say anything. He had also clearly understood the current situation. The eternal divine kingdom was gone, and his strength had fallen to the level of a demigod. This was definitely an incomparably terrifying loss to him. But he had just discovered that his constitution seemed to have undergone some changes. He was very clear about his original mountain physique, but now he discovered that his mountain physique had undergone some changes. It had become stronger and more terrifying than before. He was certain that back then, when he was in his current realm, he was definitely not as strong as he was now. In fact, the current him could even defeat more than a dozen of him in his previous realm. It should be some of the physique of the space beast that is the Dragon King's wife. Now, my mountain body has become several times stronger than before. With the inheritance that I have obtained, as long as I have enough resources, I will definitely be able to completely recover and even reach the eternal God Lord realm. Chen Feiyang's mind was active as he thought about what to do next. Go. God Lord Guangyi wants all of us to go and worship him. Let's hurry over. All below the gods are ants. This time, even if the gods don't go to the eternal divine kingdom, they'll fall. God Lord Guangyi is too overbearing. He actually wants all of us to worship him and make the gods his disciples. But, who dares not go? Just as Aoxia was devouring the divine tomb, everyone in the world flew towards the eternal divine kingdom in the North Pole with solemn expressions. With the words of the God Lord of Light Wing, the eternal divine kingdom had been opened and everyone was going to worship it. Who would dare not go? This time, everyone discovered that the God Lord of Light Wing was much more domineering than the other gods. Back then, even when the gods descended, they did not kill any mortals. And when the God Lord of Light Wing killed Chen Feiyang, the God Lord's successor, tens of thousands of people were killed. It could be seen that the eternal God Lord treated them like ants. Moreover, he even dared to declare that if the gods didn't join the eternal divine kingdom and become disciples, they would be sentenced to death, let alone mortals. After witnessing the terrifying strength of the god Lord Guangyi, everyone had to go to the eternal divine kingdom to worship him. The eternal god Lord was already a mysterious and unknown terrifying existence to them. Billions of people rushed toward the eternal divine kingdom in the South Pole. They had to reach the eternal divine kingdom in 3 days. After 1 day, more and more people gathered around the eternal divine kingdom. The recovery of the spiritual energy had greatly improved the physique of many people. It was not difficult to rush here. In just 1 day, 2 to 3 billion people had gathered around the eternal divine kingdom. Everyone gathered around the eternal divine kingdom and looked at the divine kingdom with reverence in their eyes. So far, it seems that no gods have arrived, right? Some people who had just arrived floated in the sky and looked around, asking in surprise. Gods? Aren't the gods the Dragon King and the Dragon Palace? Xiao Ran from the Dragon Gate Academy is the Dragon King's disciple, so they are naturally together. Then do you think the Dragon King is a match for the God Lord of Light Wings? How can he be a match for the God Lord of Light Wings? Qin Feiyang can only be so terrifying. He even has billions of space locusts, but wasn't he easily killed? Everyone discussed. Now that all the living beings had rushed over, the gods were next. The gods on Earth respected the Dragon King. The Dragon King's attitude might represent the attitude of the other gods. They were all discussing whether the Dragon King would come over and submit. Did the Dragon King have the strength to fight against the God Lord of Lightwing? You may not know about the Eternal God Lord. In the boundless star field, an Eternal God Lord can suppress an entire star field and control at least dozens of planets. With one strike he can destroy planets. Even if the God Lord of Lightwing hasn't recovered to his peak, ordinary gods cannot fight against him. Qin Feiyang is a good example. Humph, the Dragon King and the others can destroy the gods, but there's a world of difference between the God realm and the Eternal God Lord realm. I dare say that the Dragon King and the others will definitely come. The Dragon King's Dragon Palace's strength is about the same as Qin Feiyang's. If he still wants to live, he will definitely come. The disciples of the Lingxiao Treasured Palace's sacred hall who had come with the gods said one by one. They came from the boundless star field, so they naturally knew the majesty of the Eternal God Lord. Moreover, they didn't have a good impression of the Dragon King or the Dragon Palace. If the Dragon King hadn't destroyed the Lingxiao Treasured Palace or the Sacred Hall, they wouldn't have become ordinary people now because of their powerful background. Some people in the surroundings were slightly silent when they heard their words. The Eternal God Lord, an Eternal God Lord who could easily destroy the inheritor of the God Lord Qin Feiyang. This time the Dragon King and the others were probably. Some of them looked behind them and then in the direction of the Eternal Divine Kingdom, waiting silently. At this moment, on the highest mountain in the center of the Eternal Divine Kingdom, the God Lord of Light Wings slowly opened his eyes and stood up with his huge body. An endless pressure came from his body, and the bright feathers around him swirled. I'm almost at the peak of the godly state. Chapter 2026 2026 Dragon King. Here it comes. Congratulations Lord God Lord, your strength has increased once again. Congratulations Lord God Lord, your strength has recovered. Within the Eternal Divine Kingdom, Suiyin's illusionary light body kneeled in front of him and bowed respectfully. We are still quite a distance away from recovering to the God Lord realm. However, once we recover to the peak of the God realm, we will be able to open up that mountain guy's divine kingdom. The God Lord raised his head slightly and looked towards the direction outside the divine kingdom. Lord God Lord, everyone on this planet has already rushed over here. I reckon that the entire world will soon gather in front of the divine kingdom and prostrate before you. Suiyin said respectfully to the God Lord. Oh, why hasn't a single god arrived? The God Lord stared outside with a cold glint in his eyes as he asked indifferently. My lord, all the gods now respect the Dragon King. Perhaps only when the Dragon King arrives will the other gods come. I just don't know if that damn Dragon King will disobey my lord. Suiyin immediately said. Dragon King? Hee hee, if they don't come, then I'll use their flesh and blood and resources to recover my strength. The God Lord of Light Wings was full of powerful majesty. He didn't care about the Dragon Palace or the Dragon King at all. It's you Lord God Lord. Even if we kill them after we arrive at the Boundless Star area, it's enough to have more than 10 gods from the Fire God Palace to serve you. Sui Yin's eyes sparkled as he said. The God Lord of Light Wings glanced at Sui Yin indifferently. He knew what he was thinking. However, he held his tiger head high and didn't argue with Sui Yin. Right now, everything was focused on recovering his own strength. As long as he recovered to the peak, how could he worry about having no gods to rely on? This time, if a god didn't come, he would treat it as his own food. The spiritual energy on this planet has recovered, and the gods have revived. Many people have obtained quite a lot of opportunities. Go outside and summon some servants to manage my divine kingdom. The God Lord of Light Wings said calmly to Sui Yin. Yes, Lord God Lord. I will do it right away. Sui Yin immediately bowed and nodded. The reason why the God Lord of Light Wings had opened up his divine kingdom and made all the living beings worship him was that he wanted to recruit some servants. All the subordinates who had once followed him in battle had died. Now the entire divine kingdom was empty without any living creatures. He needed at least tens of thousands of divine servants to take care of the entire divine kingdom. At the same time, he also needed to make some preparations for his future development. Earth had experienced the recovery of spiritual energy. One by one, the ancient lands of the divine kingdom appeared. This kind of opportunity was incomparably huge in the boundless star field. Under various reasons, countless elites and geniuses would naturally be born. Sui Yin rode on a divine light tiger, and around him were more than 10 divine light tigers. He sat proudly on it and immediately flew out. There's a figure coming out of the eternal divine kingdom. Is it the divine Lord of Light Wings? There's movement in the divine kingdom. Quick, kneel down. At this moment, at the entrance of the eternal divine kingdom, when someone saw a figure coming out of the divine kingdom, they cried out in alarm. Some people even knelt on the ground, their faces filled with reverence. It's Sui Yin, the strongest person in the Fire God Palace. When Sui Yin rode out of the divine kingdom of light, everyone immediately recognized him. 2 to 3 billion people immediately looked at him, their eyes filled with confusion. Lord God Guangyi is preparing to recruit 10,000 divine servants into the eternal divine kingdom. Light-attributed people and talented people can join. Upon entering the eternal divine kingdom, you will become the servant of the eternal divine Lord. You will live in the eternal divine kingdom for eternity and enjoy the baptism of the divine kingdom. This will be a great opportunity for you. Those who feel that they are qualified, step onto the steps of light and enter the eternal divine kingdom. Sui Yin rode on top of the divine light tiger. His gaze swept across everyone in front of him as he announced proudly. Recruiting servants. When everyone heard his words, they were slightly shocked, especially those on earth. Becoming a servant was very difficult for them to accept. Becoming a servant of the eternal God Lord and staying in the eternal divine kingdom forever, is this true? Being able to stay in the eternal divine kingdom forever, this is simply a huge opportunity. This is the eternal God Lord's divine kingdom. Different from some people on earth, the disciples who followed them all revealed excited and passionate expressions. Entering the eternal divine kingdom and living in the divine kingdom forever was simply a huge blessing. This meant that behind him was a divine Lord. In the future, who would dare to provoke him in the boundless star field? I'm willing to join. I'm willing to join. For a moment, one figure after another flew up the stairs of light. Greetings, Sir Sui Yin. Sir, would you like to see if I have the qualifications to join? One person after another flew over and knelt in front of Sui Yin. Very quickly, there were several 100,000 people in front of the stairs of light. Among them were former disciples of the Sacred Hall and also former disciples of the Lingxiao Treasured Palace. There were even some disciples of the Dragon Gate Academy. If the God Lord of Light Wing suppresses everyone in the future, he will join the eternal divine kingdom and become a divine servant. He will be high and mighty. Not only that, an eternal God Lord has a lifespan of 1,000,000 years. No one will dare to provoke him if he becomes the eternal God Lord's divine servant. At this moment, more people realized this problem. However, it's another story if the Lightwing God Lord can suppress the Dragon King of the Dragon Palace. Will the Dragon King and the others be a match for the Lightwing God Lord? If they aren't a match for him, why didn't the Dragon King and the others rush over to become his divine disciples despite knowing how powerful the Lightwing God Lord is? Seeing more and more people flying over, the commotion around became even greater. Soon, many people began to discuss the Dragon King and the Lightwing God Lord's strength. Hee hee, if the Dragon King of the Dragon Palace and the others don't kneel here, tomorrow will be the day they die. Hearing the discussions in front of them, Sui Yin said confidently. Hearing his words, everyone felt a slight chill in their hearts. More and more people knelt in front of the stairs of light, and Sui Yin picked 10,000 of them. The chosen people followed Sui Yin excitedly, walking toward the eternal divine kingdom. Tomorrow the divine Lord of Light Wing will probably come out. I wonder if the Dragon King and the others will come over. I wonder if a war will break out. Some people thought to themselves as they stood there and waited quietly. At this moment, in the North Pole's divine tomb, a huge and ferocious body was wreaking havoc in the entire divine kingdom. The divine kingdom, which covered an area of more than 10,000 kilometers, was now in an extremely sorry state. Only 1/10 of the buildings and the mountain peaks remained. I should be able to finish devouring it by tomorrow. I wonder how strong Ao Crab will be? Wang Xian stood at the top of a mountain peak and looked at it with a twinkle in his eyes. He turned around slowly and looked in the direction of the South Pole. Chapter 2027 2027 Dragon King. Here it comes. Ao Crab, Dragon of Devouring. Level, 9 Wisps of Divine Fire. A day passed very quickly. When the entire interior of the divine tomb was completely devoured, Wang Xian looked towards the center. Ao Crab, whose entire body was emitting khaki and black energy, revealed a smile when he looked at its attributes. 9 Wisps of Divine Fire. This is already sufficient. He mumbled. Under the circumstances where the Ao Crab with 9 Wisps of Divine Fire was fighting against someone of a higher level, it was sufficient to be invincible under the Eternal Lord. In fact, he might even be able to fight against the Eternal Lord. Master, it's already the 3rd day. Shall we go over? Xiao Ran walked over and looked at Wang Xian as he asked. Of course we have to go over. Since the God of Light Wings wants all the gods to go over, let's go and have a look. Wang Xian nodded his head lightly and looked at Lan Qingyue. Bring Xiaolan along. Let's go meet the God of Light Wings. All right. Lan Qingyue nodded her head. Wang Xian moved his body and flew out of the divine tomb, floating in the sky. Bus. Name Wang Xian. Race, Yin-Yang 5 Elements Divine Dragon, Mandragon Unity. Level, 2 Wisps of Divine Fire, 5th Transformation of the Divine Dragon Transformation. Divine Crystal, 542221/1000000000000. Ability, rules the water race below its own level. Devours living things to extract divine crystals. Control of the 5 elements. Cultivation method, Divine Dragon Transformation. Ability, soul-absorbing, spirit-attaching, Yin-Yang 5 Elements Dragon Eyes. Aspect, 5 Elements Millstone, Dragon Kingdom in the palm, Dragon Head under the sky, Dragon Body of 10,000 miles, Yin-Yang Poles, Yin-Yang 5 Elements Arms Bowl, Divine Dragon Tail Swing. Divine Kingdom, Dragon Palace. Dragon Palace, Level 6. Dragon Palace Member, 26,633. He had a thought and an attribute appeared in his mind. Looking at his own strength, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. When Lan Qingyue and the rest obtained a bunch of resources from Chen Feiyang, he lit up the 2nd Wisp of Divine Fire. With 2 Wisps of Divine Fire, he could fight against the god of 8 Wisps of Divine Fire with his full strength. Prime Minister Gue Aoxia and a group of girls stood beside Wang Xian. At this moment, a black hole the size of 100 kilometers appeared out of thin air behind them. In the black hole, Xiaolan's gigantic body slowly emerged. Let's go to the eternal kingdom of the South Pole. Lan Qingyue touched Xiaolan and said to him. Woo woo. Xiaolan shook her body slightly and opened her huge mouth. Buzz buzz buzz. Roar roar roar. Just as Wang Xian and the rest were about to head to the eternal kingdom of the South Pole, the entire eternal kingdom suddenly trembled. A roar filled with endless majesty rang out. Is the God of Light Wings coming out? The Dragon King and the rest are still not here. Are they preparing to fight against the God of Light Wings? 3 days had already passed. At this time, the number of people gathered in front of the eternal divine kingdom had already reached a few billion. Everyone in the world had gathered here. When they saw the divine kingdom tremble and the roar, everyone's hearts trembled slightly. The radiant wing god lord had come out, but not a single god had arrived. Hua hua hua. At this time, on both sides of the entrance of the divine kingdom, divine servants wearing radiant armor quickly ran out and lined up neatly in 2 rows. Their faces were filled with fervor and piety, and even a trace of madness. At this moment, all of them were 2 levels higher than yesterday. This was a promotion given to them by their Lord God. They couldn't help but rejoice that their choice was so correct. The 5,000 people on both sides slightly raised their heads, revealing a trace of arrogance on their faces. From today onwards, they were the eternal God Lord's divine servants. After today, the eternal God Lord would suppress everything, and they would also be above all the living beings in front of them. Everyone was slightly stunned when they saw the divine servants who had joined the eternal divine kingdom yesterday. They felt the great change in their power, and shock appeared on their faces. Is this the benefit of joining the eternal divine kingdom? Everyone will increase by 2 levels in 1 day. Is this the power of a God Lord? Everyone was extremely shocked, and some of them looked regretful. Voila! Suddenly, the sound of flapping wings could be heard, and the divine servants on both sides immediately knelt on the ground. Lord God Lord Lightwing has arrived, all living beings worship him. A voice sounded from within the divine kingdom, and soon after, a huge figure filled with pressure slowly appeared. Light wings fluttered around him, and a divine crown of light appeared on his head. At this moment, God Lord Lightwing's entire body was filled with an imposing aura, and his mighty divine might enveloped a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers. God Lord Lightwing. Everyone's hearts trembled as they felt this suppressive might that was like a prison. Everyone hurriedly knelt on the ground. Wong. God Lord Lightwing landed on the top of the stairs of light, looking down at the billions of people in front of him. His eyes were filled with indifference. In his eyes, these mortals were just ants. None of the gods have arrived. God Lord Guangyi swept his gaze across everyone, his eyes flashing with a hint of coldness. Not a single god had arrived. This was a provocation to him. God Lord Guangyi's first words slightly surprised everyone. The area within a radius of more than 10,000 kilometers was deathly silent, and no one responded. The Dragon King's group had yet to arrive, causing many people to be extremely astonished. Could it be that the Dragon King really had the strength to contend with the Divine Lord of Lightwing? Reporting to the Divine Lord, not a single one of the gods with the Dragon King as their leader has arrived. They dare to disobey the Divine Lord and shall be punished with death. Suiyin followed behind and respectfully reported loudly. Disobeying the Divine Lord shall be punished with death. The tens of thousands of divine servants on both sides also shouted with cold faces. No one can challenge my dignity. A trace of killing intent appeared in the eyes of the God Lord of Lightwing. Everyone instantly felt a chill in their hearts, as if a pair of invisible hands were pressing down on their necks. Next, is the God Lord of Lightwing going to kill the Dragon King and the others? Countless people thought in their minds. But since the God of Light Wings has invited us, the Dragon Palace will naturally come over. I, the Dragon King, will naturally come over. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in the void. Everyone was slightly shocked. They quickly raised their heads and looked up into the sky. This is. Right opposite the God of Light Wings, in the sky above billions of people, a gigantic black hole appeared out of thin air. Inside the black hole, Wang Xian, Guan Shuqing and the other girls as well as the leaders of the Dragon Palace, strolled out. The Dragon King is here. Is he going to become the disciple of the God of Light Wings? Hiss, the Dragon King is here after all. It seems that the Dragon King is really afraid of the God of Light Wings. Everyone's expression changed slightly when they saw the figures of the Dragon King and the rest. Some of them could not help but mutter. Since you're here, why don't you scram to the front and kneel before us? When Suiyin saw Wang Xian and the rest, he roared with a ferocious expression. The God of Wings of Light also stared at Wang Xian and the rest with a cold gaze. His eyes were filled with indifference. Woo woo. However, when Suiyin's voice had just faded, a deep voice sounded. In the black hole, a gigantic object slowly appeared in everyone's sight. Its 300-kilometer-long body instantly covered the sky of countless people. When the surrounding people saw the Dragon King's figure standing on the huge beast, they were slightly shocked. Was he here to submit? Chapter 2028. 2028 God of War number 2028. Bus, bus, bus. In the sky in front of the eternal kingdom of South Pole, the god of light wings was facing Wang Xian and the rest from afar. The surrounding air was somewhat frozen. Everyone could feel a terrifying aura brewing in the middle. Wang Xian and the rest were standing on top of Xiaolan's head. They were staring at the god of light wings with smiles on their faces. As for Suiyin, they did not even take a glance at him. Woo woo. Xiaolan stared at the god of light wings with her huge eyes and let out a soft roar. A savage aura emanated from her body without the slightest hint of fear. Hiss, that space behemoth is that space behemoth. This is the space behemoth that covered Earth with the space locust. Oh my god, this space behemoth is actually a member of the Dragon Palace. This space beast. The Dragon King and the others have this terrifying space beast. They are completely qualified to fight against the God Lord of Light Wing. Space beast, why is the Dragon King leading this space beast? This is to fight against the God Lord of Light Wing. Shocked voices came from below. Everyone's faces were filled with shock. Last time, when the space locusts covered the entire Earth, a space behemoth appeared out of nowhere and averted the disaster on Earth. Everyone thought that they were lucky. Now it seemed that this space behemoth was completely a member of the Dragon Palace, a subordinate of the Dragon King. How terrifying was this space behemoth? One thing everyone could be sure of was that it was definitely not weaker than Qin Feiyang or even stronger. The Dragon King had brought him here with such an attitude, and it was clear that he wanted to fight against the God Lord. Suiyin looked at the space beast that came out of the black hole, and his eyes widened in shock. When the divine servants who had joined the eternal divine kingdom saw this scene, they looked slightly embarrassed. Space beast, I didn't expect there to be another space beast on this planet. Lightwing Master was also slightly stunned when he saw Little Blue. In the universe, the most powerful single creature was the space beast. Space beasts roamed the space, feeding on all kinds of energy or other space beasts. Each space beast had the power of a god level, and there were very few space beasts less than 5 or 6 wisps of divine fire. Slightly stronger space beasts were comparable to the eternal God Lord's strength. As for those that were stronger, there were some. In the history of the starry skies, space beasts were also known as disaster beasts. As for space locusts, they couldn't become space beasts. They were only space beasts. Haha, but if I absorb the energy of this space beast, I'll definitely be able to obtain a huge recovery. However, all of a sudden, under everyone's astonished gaze, the god of light wings suddenly roared with laughter. Hearing his excited laughter, everyone was slightly stunned. Facing such a terrifying space beast, not only is the god of light wings not worried at all, he is actually very happy. What a strong confidence he has. Everyone's eyes sparkled as they watched. As expected of the former eternal god. He is indeed arrogant. Wang Xian looked at his arrogant manner that did not put anyone in his eyes and said faintly, "Oh? Used to be?" When the god of wings heard Wang Xian's words, the smile on his face stopped abruptly. He stared at Wang Xian with an awe-inspiring and cold gaze. "I will make all the gods my disciples. Kneel or die. I will give you 5 seconds to choose." The god of light wings was still staring at Wang Xian and the rest with dignity. Tiske, what an arrogant beast. Eight-limbed Mo Sha sneered when he saw how arrogant this fellow was and how he ignored everything. Roar roar, since you have chosen to die, I will fulfill your wish. When the god of light wings heard eight-limbed Mo Sha's words, killing intent instantly filled his entire body. Do you really think that you can fight against me with the help of the space beasts? It's just a giant beast that is comparable to 8 wisps of divine fire. He raised his head and a pair of huge wings of light unfolded. Roar. With a tiger roar, a tiger head with a radius of more than 100 kilometers attacked Wang Xian and the rest directly. The head of the tiger of light soared into the sky as if it wanted to devour the entire sky. At this moment, the billions of people below revealed a look of fear. This is bad. If we were to fight, even if it was just a small ripple, we wouldn't be able to withstand it. This is bad. In a battle of this level, if some energy were to sweep over, tens of millions of people could be turned into ashes. When everyone saw the radiant wing god attacking, their faces revealed a look of fear. Behind them, countless people hurriedly fled into the distance. Tiske, he clearly hasn't recovered to the God Lord realm yet, and he actually dares to call himself a God Lord. Ao Crab saw the radiant tiger head that was attacking them, and a trace of coldness appeared on his face. His body trembled, and a dragon head of a devouring dragon instantly condensed in the sky. The dragon head was incomparably savage, and it was also 100 kilometers in size. It was filled with an evil aura. Dragon head versus tiger head. Ao Crab versus God Lord Lightwing. Roar. 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 The dragon roared and the tiger roared. The two enormous dragon heads of the devouring dragon clashed against God Lord Lightwing's tiger head, tearing at it madly. In an instant, waves of terrifying light energy and dark earth elemental energy shot out in all directions. The battle erupted. Buzz buzz buzz. Little Blue's body shook, and streaks of earthen yellow energy appeared below, enveloping everyone below. Boom boom boom. Countless amounts of energy landed on the energy barrier and were completely blocked. It was the Dragon King and the others who blocked the shockwaves of the battle. The Dragon King is still on Earth. Regardless of whether Earth enters the boundless star field or encounters danger in the chaotic region, it was the Dragon King and the others who took care of it. I hope the Dragon King can defeat the God Lord of Lightwing. Look, the one who took action is the Dragon King's subordinate. He blocked the God Lord of Lightwing's attack. When everyone below saw this scene, they heaved a heavy sigh of relief. They looked up into the sky and saw the enormous dragon head and tiger head colliding. The tiger head was actually torn open with huge wounds. Oh! God Lord Lightwing's pupils constricted slightly when he saw the scene in the sky. His gaze was fixed on Ao Crab. You are actually able to withstand my attack. It seems that you really do have some strength. However, the stronger you are, the better. This means that after I kill you, I will be able to recover even faster. God Lord Lightwing's entire body revealed a sinister expression. Waves of light energy trembled on his body. A terrifying radiance covered half the sky. The Dragon King and the others are very powerful. However, you have completely angered God Lord Lightwing. You are finished. You are finished. When Suiyin saw that the Dragon King and the others were actually able to block God Lord Lightwing's attack, his expression changed slightly. However, very quickly he growled with a malevolent expression. Chapter 2029. 2029 Under the God of War. Kill the Dragon King and the others. The Lord God is invincible. How can a Dragon King be a match for the Lord God? Wait for your death. On both sides of the Stairs of Light, 10,000 divine servants were slightly shocked when they saw the powerful attacks of the Dragon King and the others. However, soon after they roared ferociously. They had joined the Eternal Life Divine Kingdom and become the divine servants of the God Lord of Lightwing. Naturally, they hoped that the God Lord of Lightwing could kill the Dragon King and the others. They hoped that the God Lord of Lightwing could suppress the entire planet and lead them into the boundless star field to suppress an area. The God Lord of Lightwing is invincible. He killed the small fry of the Dragon Palace. Suiyin roared loudly. The God Lord of Lightwing is invincible. He killed the small fry of the Dragon Palace. The rest of the divine servants followed suit and roared. Roar, roar. God Lord Lightwing's body was emitting a powerful and terrifying pressure. His huge body slightly bent, and in an instant he pounced toward Aosia toward Little Blue. His enormous wings, divine crown and terrifying pressure. This leap of his was filled with invincible power. Little Blue, pull him into the Kuan region. Lan Qingyue immediately ordered Little Blue. By pulling him into the Kuan region, they would be able to gain the upper hand and prevent the battle from affecting the people below. If they were to really fight, just the aftershocks of the battle would be enough to kill everyone below. Wong? Woo woo woo. Little Blue looked at God Lord Lightwing who was charging over. His body trembled slightly, and a terrifying black hole appeared in front of him. A powerful suction force was transmitted over. This is. God Lord Lightwing's body shone brightly, wanting to resist the suction force of the Kuan region. He struggled with all his might, and his incomparably powerful strength caused his body to remain motionless. Come in. Ao Qiqian, Ao Xingmu, Ao Qi, and the others looked at each other and roared wildly. One chain after another, one thorn after another, a total of 11 berserk dragon species and 4 starwood dragon species pulled toward God Lord Lightwing. Even though their strength was only comparable to the 4 wisps of divine fire, it was still a considerable disturbance to the god of light wings. The divine kingdom's domain? Even if I enter, what can you do to me? The god of light wings moved his body and entered the Kuan region. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In an instant, Wang Xian and the rest entered the Kuan region as well. Everything in the sky vanished instantly. This situation is exactly the same as when Qin Feiyang wanted to suppress him for an entire lifetime. He disappeared. Where did the space beast take them? Why did he suddenly disappear? Do you guys think that the Dragon King and the rest are a match for the god of light wings? I still support the Dragon King to defeat the god of light wings. I don't know. But since they were able to bring him into the void, the Dragon King and the rest are definitely not weak. Voices of discussion came from below. Some timid people took advantage of this opportunity and quickly hid far away. The entire eternal divine kingdom was in chaos. The Lord God is invincible. Suiyin and the divine servants only stared at the void, their faces slightly malevolent. Everyone scattered around and waited quietly. Roar. At the same time in the Kuan region, the god of light wings scanned the entire space with a cold expression. Is this the divine kingdom territory of the space behemoth? The god of Lightwing's face was filled with a dense aura as he stared coldly at Wang Xian and the rest. A fallen god lord is not recovering properly. Now he wants us to become your divine disciples. Then this time I will let you die completely. Wang Xian stared at the god of light wings with a cold look in his eyes. A god master who had yet to recover to his peak wanted to enslave them. Roar. My light wings have been conquering the void for hundreds of thousands of years. Today I will add your blood to my eternal divine map. The god of light wings spread his enormous wings and flapped them slightly. A divine map of light slowly appeared on his back. On the divine diagram there was the image of a godly tiger. Below the godly tiger, countless creatures were kneeling and worshipping. In the middle there was a gigantic blood pool. The blood pool was emitting a strong bloody smell. The entire divine diagram was gigantic and had a radius of more than 100 kilometers. Boom. The god of light leaped into the air and attacked Wang Xian and the rest directly. The divine map of light revolved around the surroundings, emitting a strong power of light. Tiske, let me experience your strength. Roar roar. Ao Crab leaped forward from Xiaolan's body. His body immediately transformed into a ferocious devouring dragon. His entire body was filled with sharp thorns and bones. His ferocious tail swept towards the god of light wings. You're courting death. God Lord Lightwing also wagged his tail. The divine map of light spun, and streams of energy poured into the tiger's tail. Boom. A terrifying collision was heard, and God Lord Lightwing's face was filled with confidence and arrogance. His strength had recovered to 9 wisps of divine fire, and with the help of the divine map of light wing, his natal artifact, he felt that he was invincible under the eternal master. Facing the ferocious Ao Crab in front of him, he was not worried at all. However, when he collided with the Ao Crab, his expression suddenly changed. The collision between the dragon tail and the tiger tail did not send the opponent flying, even with the support of the divine map. Instead, an intense pain came from the tiger tail. Roar, roar, roar. At this moment, the incomparably ferocious devouring dragon head directly bit towards him. Roar, roar. God Lord Lightwing also roared loudly. The divine light diagram draped over his body, and the God Lord on the divine light diagram bit towards Ao Crab. Crack, crack, crack. When the divine tiger on the divine light diagram bit Ao Crab, a series of cracking sounds rang out. The God Lord's expression changed slightly. How is this possible? Your strength. At this moment his expression changed slightly. He flapped his wings slightly and 2 enormous wings of light slashed towards Ao Crab. Boom, boom. Ao Crab also flapped his enormous wings of bone to meet the wings of light. A violent collision sounded and the wings of light disappeared instantly. Roar, roar. Ao Crab raised his sharp dragon claws and clawed towards the body of the God Lord of Light Wings. Light Wing Divine Map, cover my body. The Light Wing Divine Master roared and covered his body with the divine map. The creatures on the map raised their hands, and a terrifying shield of light condensed in front of them. Ping! The dragon claw landed on the divine map, but there was no fluctuation at all. Damn it, you are a beast, how can you have such terrifying strength? The light-winged divine master's face was extremely ugly at this time. The arrogance and confidence that he had in his hands had completely disappeared. He opened his huge mouth and a terrifying flare of light shot towards Ao Crab. Roar. Roar. Today Ao Crab will definitely kill you. When Ao Crab heard his words, his entire body shot out a terrifying killing intent. Similarly, he opened his savage dragon mouth and shot out an attack covered in black spots. Boom. The sound of an explosion rang out again. Chapter 2030. 2030. The 2030 Dragon Palace was invincible in this world and could sweep through all enemies. The short-term attack was completely evenly matched. Ao Crab was very strong and could almost fight 2 levels above him. However, the god of light wings could not be treated with common sense. The most terrifying thing was the divine map of light wings on the god of light wings. It was once an eternal god-level divine artifact. Even though its power had decreased, it could still be considered invincible below the eternal god level. Xiaolan, let's fight. Wang Xian's eyes flickered as he watched the battle between Ao He and the god of wings. With Ao He's strength, he might not be able to kill the god of wings in a short period of time. Xiao Xian, be careful. The group of girls immediately said. With the current strength of the Dragon Palace, the only ones who could participate in the battle were Wang Xian, Xiaolan, and Ao He. The rest of Ao Qitian and the others were only comparable to the gods with 4 wisps of divine fire. Roar. Wang Xian let out a furious roar. His entire body immediately turned into a few thousand meters in size. His 7-colored body was flickering with light. Bust. His body trembled. Behind him, the Dragon Palace slowly appeared behind him. The 5 elements grinding mill was suspended high above his head while the Yin-Yang Tai Chi was suspended below him. Dragon Palace boost. 5 elements extinguish the long river. Wang Xian let out a furious roar. Streams of extinguishing long river headed straight for the god of light wings. Bust. At this moment, the entire Kuan region suddenly trembled. An invisible gray energy was suppressing the god of light wings. Damn it, there are actually 2 gods who are comparable to 8 wisps of divine fire. The strength of you bunch of damn fellows is really beyond my expectations. However, you still have to die. Light Wing Divine Map, strengthen my body. The God Lord of Light Wing roared, and the 100-kilometer divine map slowly entered his body. His body expanded again, directly becoming 50 kilometers in size. Even Ao Crab looked much weaker in front of him. Bust. Bust. But at this time, Ao Crab's body also trembled. Dragon Palace buff. A level 6 Dragon Palace could increase the offensive power of a member of the Dragon Palace by 10 times. This 10 times could give Ao Crab almost 100% of the strength to fight against the Eternal God Lord. Roar. Ao Crab roared and his body also transformed into dozens of kilometers in size as he attacked the God Lord. The river of destruction swept over, and the suppression of the Kuan region descended. What? God Lord Lightwing's expression changed once more when he saw Ao Crab's strength increase once more. He stared at the river of annihilation in front of him, then waved his enormous wings. Whoosh! Light swept past, and the river of annihilation dissipated. He then leaped forward and bit at Ao Crab. Boom! At this moment, a gray energy pressed down on his body, causing his momentum to slow down slightly. Roar! Roar! At this moment, Ao Crab's sharp dragon claws landed heavily on the head of the god of Lightwing. Roar! An intense pain was emitted from the god of Lightwing's mouth. Numerous wounds appeared on his head. 5 elements trap, chains? Wang Xian stood in the distance, swaying his huge body as he shouted again. The 5 elements chains headed towards the god of Lightwing. Bust. At the same time, the entire Kuan region trembled gently once again. A powerful force landed on the body of the god of Light Wings once again. The pressure of the Kuan region was as though the god of Light Wings was constantly supporting Xiaolan's body in battle. With Xiaolan's body size of 300 kilometers, one could imagine how terrifying the pressure was. Even though his strength was almost invincible below the Eternal God Lord, this force still placed a huge restriction on him. Whoosh! 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 Chains covered the sky as they wrapped around God Lord Lightwing. With his white body and bloody wounds on his head, God Lord Lightwing looked somewhat savage. "You bunch of damnable fellows, I'm the eternal God Lord, and you actually injured me." God Lord Lightwing, who was high up in the sky, was injured as he roared in a somewhat berserk manner. "This is only the beginning." Ao Crab's enormous body flew over. His savage dragon head, terrifying dragon claws and sharp bone spikes pounced over. Whoosh! God Lord Lightwing shook hard, and the 5 elemental chains around him instantly collapsed. He stared at Ao Crab with his blood-red eyes. Roar! With a wild roar, the countless light wings around him transformed into divine light tigers. Each divine tiger was 10 meters in size, and they pounced densely on Ao Crab. Ka ka ka. Ao Crab's gaze swept across the densely packed light bodies, and his body was also awe-inspiring. Within his dragon scales, many small devouring dragons crawled out, their blood-red eyes staring at the divine light tigers. Roar roar roar. 20,000 to 30,000 small devouring dragons directly bit towards the divine light tigers. Ao Crab continued to charge forward, his dragon tail sweeping out. The terrifying dragon tail even caused the entire Kuan region to tremble. Light praise, tiger tail blessing. The God Lord of Light Wing's expression changed slightly, and his tiger tail raised high. Wung wung wung. The sounds of praise rang out around him and countless phantoms floated around him. Waves of powerful light energy poured into the tiger tail. The second collision. Hong. The tiger's tail, which was blessed by billions of creatures, collided with Ao Crab once again. Crack, crack. A cracking sound was heard. The moment the tiger's tail collided with Ao Crab, it bent slowly. The dragon's tail continued to entangle him. The praises of billions of creatures around him dissipated instantly. What? At this moment, the expression of the God of Wings of Light finally changed drastically. A look of panic appeared on his face. Yin-Yang 5 Elemental Spear. At this moment, Wang Xian, who was floating by the side, emitted a bright and miserable glow. The 5 elemental grinding above his head emitted a 5-colored divine light. The yin-yang poles beneath his body emitted a black and white aurora. A spear condensed and was over 10 kilometers long. It directly attacked the God of Light Wings. Boom! In just an instant, the God of Light Wings, whose tail was injured by the tiger, was instantly struck by the yin-yang 5 elemental spear. This attack was Wang Xian's strongest attack at the moment. It contained 7 attributes, and its penetrative and offensive power had reached its peak. The yin-yang 5 element spear penetrated into the winged god's abdomen and only penetrated about 1 to 2 kilometers. My strength is still 1 or 2 levels lower than him. Wang Xian shook his head slightly when he saw that his full-strength attack had only caused such damage. Of course, he did not intend to seriously injure his opponent. With his strength, it was impossible for him to do so. "You ant, you deserve to die." The God of Light Wings was in pain. He pounced at Wang Xian with a ferocious expression. At this moment, the Kuan region trembled again. The gray energy landed on his body, causing his body to tremble again. "You are the one who deserves to die. If you want to attack our Dragon King, you have to go through me, Ao Crab." Ao Crab swayed his body and his dragon tail wrapped around him. 2 huge dragon claws clawed at him crazily. In an instant, blood gushed out. Chapter 2031. 2031. The 2031 Dragon Palace was unrivaled in this world, and it swept through all enemies. Ao Ao. Agonized screams rang out within the Kuan region. God Lord Lightwing swayed his enormous body, and a terrifying light shot out in all directions. The divine crown above his head rose, striking towards Ao Crab. Boom! The terrifying strike caused Ao Crab to loosen his dragon tail and dodge to the side. Roar! He opened his mouth, and a terrifying black earth-colored energy tide charged towards God Lord Lightwing. Roar! Roar! God Lord Lightwing was sent flying backwards by the energy tide. Blood began to seep out of his mouth. At this moment, his eyes revealed a hint of terror. At this moment, he sensed the threat of death. Damn it, damn it. He shook his body in panic. He knew that he had been careless. He should not have entered this domain. He had never imagined that there would be creatures on this planet that could contend with him and even injure him. If he continued to fight, he might be heavily injured or even die. Leave this domain or I might die. God Lord Lightwing thought to himself with an extremely ugly expression. He glanced warily at AO Crab, then turned around and fled to the back. Want to escape? Aren't you the invincible eternal God Lord? Didn't you want us to become your disciples? Why are you fleeing now? AO Crab said mockingly when he saw that God Lord Lightwing was actually trying to escape. His body moved, shaking his enormous body as he directly charged towards the attack. As long as I leave this place, without the suppression of this space behemoth divine kingdom, I might not necessarily be a match for that monster. God Lord Lightwing's eyes flickered with light as he fled towards the void behind him. Ping. However, when he flew 500 kilometers, he suddenly seemed to hit an invisible barrier. The expression of the God of Wings of Light changed instantly. Die. Behind him, AO Crab's terrifying dragon tail swept out once again. The God of Wings of Light, who was already hit, could not dodge in time. Boom. The dragon tail landed on the body of the God of Wings of Light, causing him to fall directly into the void. At this moment, Wang Xian's 5 Elements Annihilation River was attacking him. Bus. The Obliteration River landed on his body, causing his body to tremble. More blood flowed out from his wound. Even if the 5 Elements Obliteration River could not injure him, it could still make him feel extremely uncomfortable. There was AO Crab who could not be defeated even if he fought him alone. There were 2 races at the peak of the universe, the 7-colored Divine Dragon and the Kuan. Under such circumstances he felt extremely aggrieved. Entering Little Blue's Kuan region, he couldn't even teleport. No, I have to get out. God Lord Lightwing felt the intense pain on his body. His tiger body shook, and the divine map of light that covered his body slowly rose. Wung. All the creatures in the divine map seemed to have revived. They walked out from the divine map and stood behind it. The billions of creatures on the divine map sat cross-legged on the ground, murmuring and worshipping piously. Under the blessing of the billions of creatures, a light barrier rose up. Boom. At the same time, God Lord Lightwing's tiger palm directly attacked the area in front of him. The entire Kuan region trembled slightly, and cracks appeared in front of him. Woo. Xiaolan sensed the collapse of the Kuan region. With a roar, the cracks began to slowly heal. God Lord Lightwing, don't even think about escaping. Diske, I've never killed a God Lord before. You can be the first. AO Crab looked over and shook his body as he charged towards the divine map. Boom. The terrifying collision caused the billions of living beings below the divine map to instantly dissipate. Roar. His dragon head directly bit towards the divine diagram. Below, half of the living beings of the divine diagram died. Damn it, this planet has only just recovered its spiritual energy. How can there be such a terrifying existence? God Lord Guangyi couldn't help but roar wildly. He shot out vast amounts of light energy from his mouth and attacked the Kuan region once more. Ka. Cracks appeared once more. Crash. However, behind him, the sound of the light shield formed by the divine diagram collapsing could be heard. Oh no. His expression changed greatly, and he hurriedly dodged to the side. However, AO Crab's dragon claw had already arrived, and it landed directly on God Lord Lightwing's chest. The terrifying sharp dragon claw directly entered God Lord Lightwing's body. God Lord Lightwing was once again heavily injured. No. Light heal. Light life force. God Lord Lightwing roared, and the injuries on his body quickly healed. At the same time, the tiger palm attacked AO Crab. Roar. AO Crab opened his mouth wide and bit the tiger palm into his mouth. His sharp teeth, which were strong enough to bite through an eternal divine kingdom, were immediately broken. Roar. A painful sound was heard. The face of the God of Wings of Light began to twist. Roar. A stream of bright energy spewed out from his ferocious face as he charged toward AO Crab. AO Crab's 2 gigantic bone wings blocked the front and completely blocked his attack. Don't let him escape. At this moment, Wang Xian saw the God of Wings of Light desperately trying to escape. He immediately spoke to AO Crab. Roar. AO Crab's gigantic dragon head went straight for the God of Light Wings. At this moment, the God of Light Wings completely ignored the attacks from the back. At this moment, if he did not escape, he would be done for. He continued to bite. His eyes were blood red as he charged forward once again. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of the Kuan region shattering was heard. His eyes revealed a look of hope. Ao ao. However, at this moment, a pain that was almost tearing his body apart came over. Half of his body was bitten directly. He felt as if his body was about to break. Bang! In front of him, the Kuan region was completely torn apart. Slowly, the world that was like a black hole began to collapse. Can you escape? Wang Xian smiled when he saw the god of light wings being bitten. He moved and transformed into a human form before landing on Xiaolan's body. The world below gradually appeared in front of everyone. At this moment, countless people were scattered around. When they saw the scene in the sky, it was as though space had been shattered. Everyone widened their eyes and looked up at the sky in shock. A gigantic head appeared out of thin air above them. It's the God Lord. It's our God Lord. Ah! The God Lord has killed all of them. The God Lord has come out. Could it be that our God Lord has won? When Suiyin and the 10,000 divine servants saw the gigantic head appear out of thin air, their faces were filled with excitement. They roared loudly. When the others saw the head appear out of thin air and heard Suiyin's excited roars, their faces were filled with shock. Could it be? Chapter 2032. 2032. The 2032 Dragon Palace was invincible in this world and could sweep through all enemies. Could it be that the Dragon King and the others were really killed by the God Lord of Light Wings? Everyone looked at the huge head that appeared out of thin air, and their faces were filled with shock. The God Lord of Light Wings was about to come out, which meant that nothing had happened to him. Then, roar, roar. Just as everyone was guessing in their hearts, Suiyin and the tens of thousands of divine servants were filled with excitement and excitement. The God Lord with his head poking out let out a miserable shriek that shook the world. Everyone was shocked and widened their eyes. Crack, crack, crack. The sky above them collapsed like glass. The Kuan region had completely disappeared, and a shocking scene appeared. At this moment, the God Lord's body was bitten by an incomparably large and ferocious creature. A large amount of blood covered his snow-white body. One of his tiger palms had completely disappeared, and a rich bloody smell filled the entire starry sky. Behind God Lord Lightwing, the Dragon King and the others stood in front of the space behemoth. Kiki, why are you running? God Lord Lightwing, didn't you want us to become your disciples? Why are you running? Eight-limbed Demon Sha and the others' mocking voices rang out. Roar, roar, roar. God Lord Lightwing shook his enormous body violently, trying to break free from Ao Crab's bite. However, as a devouring dragon, Ao Crab's most powerful part was his teeth and his dragon head. How could he break free so easily? He let out a furious roar. Everyone below was completely stunned when they heard the voices of the eight-limbed Masha and the others. They were especially shocked when they saw the Light-Wing God Lord being bitten by the Dragon King's subordinates. This wasn't the Light-Wing God Lord killing the Dragon King and the others. It was the Light-Wing God Lord trying to escape. This is impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Lord Light-Wing is a God Lord. This is a God Lord that can suppress an entire lifetime in the endless star field. Even if Lord God Lord hasn't recovered to his peak, he is definitely not someone an ordinary god can contend against. At this moment, Suiyin was somewhat absent-minded. As a god that had descended here, as an expert of the endless star field, he naturally knew how powerful God Lord Lightwing was. Even if he hadn't recovered to his peak with his current strength, he was still the strongest existence in the endless star field apart from the 5 God Lords. As long as he had some resources, God Lord Lightwing would become the 6th space expert in the endless star field. But now, he was defeated by the people of the Dragon Palace. How could this be? Gulp. On both sides of the stairs of light, the tens of thousands of divine servants looked at the scene in the sky in a daze. Cold sweat appeared on their heads. They opened their mouths and felt that the sky was dark. Roar, roar, roar. At this moment, an incomparably shrill scream came from the sky. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the God of Wings struggled with all his might. His body was torn apart. There was only one head and 2 legs. Half of his body broke free and quickly fled towards the eternal divine kingdom below. Roar. Ao Crab let out a low roar. His head bit onto the half of the god of Lightwing's body and swept towards Wang Xian and the rest. Do you think you can hide just by entering the Eternal Kingdom? His body moved and he quickly chased after the front half of the god of Lightwing's body. He dived towards the Eternal Kingdom below. In the sky, the blood of the god of Lightwing spilled onto the ground like rain. His body, which was over 100 kilometers long, rapidly shrank. When he entered the Eternal Divine Kingdom, the entire Eternal Divine Kingdom instantly flashed with the power of light. Ah! The light flashed, and a repulsive force repelled Suiyin and the other divine servants. God Lord Lightwing sealed the entire Eternal Divine Kingdom. The divine servants who were repelled let out a miserable shriek, their faces blank. Do you think you can stop me with your divine kingdom? Ao Crab's eyes were cold as he roared at God Lord Guangwing. His huge dragon claws clawed at the sky above the Eternal Divine Kingdom. Boom! A terrifying force landed on the Divine Kingdom, causing a huge crack to appear on the light barrier. In the Eternal Divine Kingdom, God Lord Guangwing watched this scene in shock. His face was filled with fear. How is this possible? How can there be such a terrifying existence in such a small planet? I, Guangyi, have waited for hundreds of thousands of years to be resurrected. It was not easy for me to wait for this opportunity to be resurrected. I am not willing to accept this. He looked at the crack in the Eternal Kingdom. When he saw Ao Crab charging in, his face was filled with despair. Let's go, we'll go too. Wang Xian's figure moved as he spoke to Guan Shuqing, Lan Qingyue and the rest. Immediately he flew into the Eternal Kingdom. Roar, roar, give me a chance. Give me a chance. I can give this Eternal Kingdom to you guys. Don't kill me. Wang Xian had just entered when he heard the god of Lightwing's roar with a face full of fear. Tiscatis, if I kill you, this Eternal Kingdom will naturally belong to us. Ao Crab said coldly, and his enormous body attacked once more. No, no, I am willing to become your divine servant. Don't kill me. God Lord Lightwing couldn't help but beg for mercy when he saw Ao Crab charging over. Mimi? You still call yourself me in front of us? You better die. Ao Crab's enormous dragon head directly bit towards God Lord Lightwing's tiger head. He was already severely injured. Without half of his strength, there was no way he could block Ao Crab's attack. Ao Crab bit on the head of the god of Wings of Light. Boom! At the same time, a destructive darkness and earth attribute covered his head. Roar! 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 A muffled voice filled with despair rang out. The life force of the god of Wings of Light had completely dissipated. Wang Xian and the rest looked at this scene indifferently. A faint smile appeared on their faces. Put away the body of the god of Wings of Light. This is a huge amount of resources. Wang Xian ordered the members of the Dragon Palace. It's the Dragon King. The members of the Dragon Palace nodded excitedly. Move all the treasures of the Eternal Kingdom into the Dragon Palace. Killing the god of Light Wings was another significant amount of resources. These resources should be able to increase the number of godly state experts in the Dragon Palace. Apart from that, the body of the god of Light Wings should be enough for Ao Qitian and the rest to upgrade to at least 5 to 6 wisps of divine fire. At that time, the high-end combat strength of the Dragon Palace would also increase a little. Wang Xian and the rest were full of smiles. Qin Feiyang, who was standing at the side, watched this scene silently. An eternal god who could easily kill him was now easily killed by the Dragon King and the rest. He could not help but feel fortunate that he did not go to the Dragon Palace to provoke the Dragon King last time. Otherwise he would have been killed. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.